Important update about YouTube playlists. Hey everyone. We've received many messages asking why our YouTube playlists aren't showing up. Do we create YouTube playlists? Yes, we absolutely do. So why can't you see them? Honestly, we're not sure. We've been in contact with YouTube support for several months now, but we still haven't received a clear answer or solution. After much discussion, our team has decided to take matters into our own hands. We believe the issue might be related to the number of playlists we've created on a single channel, possibly too many. Our solution? We're launching 2 additional YouTube channels, giving us a total of 3. This way, we can organize our audiobooks better and avoid the playlist visibility issue in the future. This change only affects our YouTube audience. If you're a patron supporter, you can still access all our audiobooks by visiting the collection menu on Patreon. Thanks so much for your time and continued support. Happy listening, he said, and they tried to make a call, but the Den Mushi wasn't working. After all, Luffy made sure to remove all of them from the ship as soon as he left. Buffalo, go there immediately. Pika exclaimed while he nodded immediately, leaving through the window. Viola. I want to know about anything suspicious that might show up here, you understand? Treble said, and Viola in a corner nodded. Viola was quite confused. It seemed that all Joker's allies were turning against him and his family was not managing the situation. Even with Kaido's name on them, some forces didn't seem to care, not believing that the family would continue with their arms sales as they had provided before. The meeting began and many members began to cry with the fall of Virgo as his paper disappeared completely, showing that he died. Viola spent a day thinking about what to do, and when she went to her room the next day planning to see her niece at the Colosseum today, since this kingdom belonged to Kaido now, she feared for her father's death. She needed to find a way to keep him safe. But as soon as she reached the door, she immediately opened her eyes with her X-ray vision, while she was paralyzed, debating whether to open the doorknob or not. In the end, she nervously opened the door with the room appearing to her while there was a man near the window looking at the kingdom. I was wondering how long you would stand at the door, and for a moment I thought you were going to call the rest of the Don Quixote family. Princess Viola. Luffy commented calmly without turning to the woman. Monkey D. Luffy. You are here. Viola murmured. Yes. I came here from Punk Hazard. Luffy spoke as Viola opened her eyes at that moment. So you? She asked, shocked. If I killed Virgo and captured Caesar Crown? Yes. Luffy admitted. Viola was still quite surprised by this, and she almost wanted to know the intentions of this man as she began to activate her eyes. If you try to read my mind, I won't be kind at all, Princess of Dressrosa. Luffy immediately warned. He did not want someone reading his mind. Viola quickly deactivated her eyes to not enrage the pirate in front of her. But what do you want? What are you doing here? She asked cautiously. You want this country to be free again. I heard it's now Kaido's territory. Luffy said. Yes. It belongs to Kaido. Are you planning to take him down? Viola asked. Luffy had beaten Kaido in the war, so she was thinking that he really could defeat him. I plan to take him down, but not now. Luffy said. But Viola, with a glint of hope to see this kingdom finally free, insisted, but Luffy shook his head. I know you want to take this kingdom out of the beast pirates' hands as soon as possible. And I could even free them, by going into the factory and beating up that brat who turns people into toys. Luffy finally turned to Viola. But I won't be at sea next year, so even if I defeat the Don Quixote family here, Kaido will send forces and I can't be here. Luffy spoke. He had no plans yet to go into a war now, waiting for his entire crew to be ready for such a thing. Viola didn't know what to say about this, but still, she looked at Luffy with some hope. But you will come to this country in the future then, you will go to war with Kaido? She asked as Luffy shook his head. But what do you plan? Why do you want to help Dressrosa? Viola couldn't help asking. It was strange Luffy's actions or why he was here to talk to her after everything. I intend to make this place my territory, but I won't govern it. I'll leave that to your father, putting him back on the throne again and restoring the royal family's name again. Luffy commented. Viola wasn't so surprised by the first statement. After all, Luffy wouldn't help them for nothing, but the second part left her eyes shining with hope. She was ready to beg him to do just that no matter the cost, as long as he saved her father. Thank you. She murmured in the end while looking at Luffy with a glow of admiration. It's alright, after all, I don't want to be the ruler of countries with my flag, but that doesn't mean I don't have norms and I plan to call them at a time to fight with me, but I am just, all the kingdoms with me, are growing very well. Luffy said, and Viola was surprised by this information. You have territories? She couldn't help but ask. Luffy just smiled. I've been conquering territories ever since I set out to sea. He said. I know I'm known around the world as the Four Emperors without territory. Actually, I'm quite surprised with the newspapers talking about me here. Luffy pointed to a newspaper on Viola's headboard, which she had received a few days ago. It was Luffy's bounty and his crew with new reports. Besides, he continued while pointing to the wall with a photo of his bounty and several articles about him kept under the bed. Didn't know I had a fan in this place, he said, making Viola immediately open her eyes with this. This isn't what you're thinking, she replied with a somewhat desperate tone, while turning red with embarrassment at this moment. It's okay. Let's just say you're no stalker, he replied with a smile while the woman seemed to get even redder with that. I'm no stalker, Viola murmured. Anyway, I didn't come here just to talk about some of my plans. Luffy began as Viola tried to regain her composure to listen to him. What you want? If you are fair, the royal family will be grateful and follow you, Viola replied. I plan to have Lami free this country while she kills Doflamingo. But as you can see, she did it herself in the war and Doflamingo is dead, so I thought of another way to fight for this country, since just coming here and defeating all the remaining members of Joker is too easy. Luffy said, not wanting to do everything alone. What's the concept of a crew then? I want one person to do this. He spoke in the end. One person? Viola didn't know what Luffy was talking about. I want Princess Rebecca. I came here to pick her up, Luffy said. Rebecca? Viola was surprised by this. Yes, my intentions are not bad, but I want to recruit her into my crew and give her the strength to free the country. Luffy said. He always had in mind the ideal crew to conquer the seas and handpicked his future crew members. Rebecca was always someone he intended to have as well. You intend to do this? Viola was somewhat suspicious of Luffy's actions, even a bit jealous that it wasn't her he was looking for his crew. Luffy guessed what she was thinking. Your skills are very useful, and I plan to make use of them in the future, but now you need to stay in the kingdom. To keep it, after all, the people of Dressrosa still need to see the royal family on this land. I don't believe anything will happen to Dressrosa this year, just keep things as they are. When we act it will be quick and to the point. The Don Quixote family will be destroyed and Dressrosa will be safe while we are in this sea. Luffy spoke. Yes. But what do you intend to do with my niece? Viola began to understand Luffy's reasoning, but still didn't understand how he would make Rebecca as strong as he claims. See this fruit? Luffy showed the pink fruit to Viola. It's a replica of Kaido's fruit, although not perfect, it is still very similar, Luffy declared while Viola was shocked by this information. Really? This fruit is like that of the Four Emperors Su? She murmured. Yes, anyway, take this. Luffy handed a Den Mushi to Viola. If everything is working as usual, avoid contacting, but if something happens, call me, Luffy requested, and Viola stepped forward, taking the Den Mushi before looking at Luffy gratefully. Thank you. She couldn't help but murmur with a blush. It's okay, Rebecca is in the arena and they are having games today. Luffy looked back out, towards the Colosseum in the middle of the city. Yes. Members of the Don Quixote family are trying to keep order in the kingdom and believe that keeping people busy fighting will work. Viola responded while Luffy nodded. Alright, I will take Rebecca to get her out of the kingdom. You don't need to lie when they ask who attacked the Colosseum, but keep it discreet and contact me if something happens to you or Dressrosa, Luffy requested. Yes. Viola responded in the same tone as before. Anyway, I'm going. I need to save a princess while she is forced to wear erotic clothes in front of the whole kingdom. That's too disgusting. Luffy spoke with some disdain. Viola just looked at him as Luffy merely smiled. See you later. I hope we meet soon, Princess Viola, he said before jumping into the air out of the window and flying towards the Colosseum as fast as he could. Viola continued to look at Luffy disappearing with her own thoughts, while placing the Den Mushi she received on her right chest with quite conflicting thoughts while keeping the image of Luffy in her mind with a blush on her face. Chapter 354, Rebecca Princess. Let's start another round of the next fight, the announcer shouted, hoping for another day of the tournament despite Dressrosa being quite agitated lately. Still, the Colosseum was open to everyone in the kingdom while they seemed to enjoy it. Two men in armor, one 7 meters tall and the other 4 meters, began a fight while citizens and toys continued to scream, seeming to forget that their king had been killed over a week ago. Meanwhile, no one noticed something coming towards the Colosseum from the royal castle at high speed, creating a huge impact in the middle of the place the next moment. The Colosseum shook at this moment with the impact. What is happening here? An attack on the Colosseum, the announcer shouted as the bikini-clad women beside him put their hands on their faces, worried. The crowd in the stands showed expressions of fear, while the two gladiators stopped their fight to see what was happening. Meanwhile, inside the Colosseum, debris flew in all directions, with several gladiators who had not yet entered the arena looking horrified at the destruction of the place next to them. The Colosseum was fortified so no one could leave, But here it was being destroyed, as a shadow began to emerge from the wreckage, moving into the place. Who was this? A gladiator asked, raising his sword with some fear. An enemy of Doflamingo taking advantage of his death? Another expressed his thoughts. We should call the Don Quixote family. A guard exclaimed as the shadow finally came out of the wreckage while Luffy wore his usual casual clothes, his hat showing his symbol. Wait. This is... All the gladiators immediately recognized who this person was. He is Monkey D. Luffy. A 4 Emperor Su. The one who is captain of the woman who killed Doflamingo. He killed Agorosai, one of the people who rule the world. Fought against Garp, Sengoku, 3 admirals, and even hit Kaido. Everyone immediately became shocked by who was in front of them, feeling very afraid and immediately backing away. He has a bounty of 3.5 billion baileys. Another exclaimed, trembling. Luffy continued walking, listening to the comments while cracking a small smile. But the next moment, he released his haki, making everyone in that place fall to the ground. Luffy saw everyone collapsing, except for one person he excluded from his haki as soon as he felt her. Rebecca was in a corner wearing classic clothes that showed most of her body like a kind of bikini, something used to ridicule her while turning the princess of the kingdom into being exposed like a prostitute. She was surprised by the explosion and heard everyone exclaiming Luffy's name as soon as she appeared. She wasn't sure how to act, though she was grateful for Straw Hat beating and humiliating Doflamingo while that Lamy killed him in the war. She didn't know why this powerful pirate was here and her first thought was to run from there, but as she was about to take the first step, a powerful wind swept through the place and the next moment she saw the crowd falling to the ground with white eyes and open mouths, fainted instantly. She saw this in the war shown on the screen and she took a step back with so much fear and it reached its peak when Monkey D. Luffy stared at her from that distance with a smile. Why is he looking at me? Rebecca murmured as she raised her sword against Luffy, waiting for him to make a move. Rebecca. Luffy said calmly as he began to walk towards her. How do you know who I am? What do you want? Rebecca kept her sword as she began to tremble. She knew she couldn't handle this man. I know who you are because I came looking for you and I want to take you from here. Luffy replied calmly. This caught Rebecca by surprise as she narrowed her eyes trying to look at him with courage. What do you mean by that? Simple. I am here to take you. I want to make you stronger. Do you want to be free? Want to free Dressrosa? Luffy asked calmly. Make stronger. Freedom. She murmured a bit confused by these words. I have a proposal for you. I want you in my crew. I wish to make you so strong that in 1 year, you will return and almost destroy the entire Don Quixote family and free Dressrosa, and I will go to war against Kaido, but I want you to follow me until the end of my journey. Luffy gave her his proposal. Rebecca had stunned eyes, almost dizzy from hearing this. She could never have imagined receiving such a proposal as Luffy walked up to a few meters from her. Are you serious? She murmured. Yes, I just spoke with your aunt and I know she is watching us from the castle right now. I want to free you and restore the Riku family, with your grandfather returning as king and you receiving the title of Princess of Dressrosa along with your aunt, and not living in this humiliating way. You want a better life, so I want you by my side. Luffy spoke as Rebecca was left speechless, looking at Luffy. Rebecca, despite having many sympathizers, was still ostracized. Everyone laughed at her and made malicious comments, constantly living in humiliation. She had never been touched, as her aunt would never allow such a thing to happen, but even so, for a 14-year-old teenager, this was a cruel life. Everyone had fierce voices against the Riku family and took it out on her and her grandfather, who often came to the Colosseum. Now she was hearing something from a stranger she never imagined, saying he would take her away and make her strong, her family and her country would be saved by her. This caught her by surprise and as someone living this kind of life, she always clung to anything that gave her hope, even suffering in the Colosseum. She wanted to become strong enough to have killed Doflamingo and free her aunt and grandfather from the clutches of their enemies. That's why at that moment, she started to tear up, looking at Luffy as tears began to fall. Really? Do you think I can become strong enough to free this country? Do you want to take me with you? She asked as tears started to fall. Yes, we'll spend 1 year away training and I want to recruit you to my crew. Although you will become a pirate, you are not the first princess in my crew. Vivi, the princess of Alabasta, and Shirahoshi, the mermaid princess, are with me and have become powerful women, although today they are also my wives. Luffy murmured at the end, and hearing this, Rebecca blushed, but looked at Luffy with hope. She didn't know why, but she felt she could trust this man. Be careful, Rebecca. A voice emerged at this moment and a toy soldier in dark and red clothes with only one leg, using a type of toy weapon, jumped and stood in front of Rebecca and Luffy. Toy-san. She was surprised by this. The toy soldier seemed to look at Luffy unafraid and Luffy looked at him with interest. Don't trust what this pirate is saying, you don't know him to believe in his words. he said firmly. So you appeared. Luffy commented, looking at Kairos calmly. Sorry, Toy-san, but I will accept Monkey D. Luffy's proposal. Rebecca spoke, and Luffy was surprised with the system putting her as an official member. I've never had such a quick acceptance in the crew, Luffy commented internally, quite pleased. But the same could not be said of the toy, who looked at Rebecca stunned. Don't do it, Rebecca, he exclaimed, but Rebecca shook her head. I will believe in him. He defeated Doflamingo once, and I will do anything to become stronger, she said determinedly. As the toy soldier was about to try to convince Rebecca not to agree to this, because it was very suspicious for one of the world's greatest pirates to appear at this moment, and wanting to take Rebecca, saying he will train her, as a father, he didn't trust Luffy at all with this attitude, even though he is an enemy of the Don Quixote family. I'm not surprised by this, toy soldier, Luffy interrupted before continuing. She is your daughter, so I understand your concern, Luffy admitted, catching both the toy soldier and Rebecca looking at Luffy confused. What do you mean by that, Mr. Luffy? Rebecca asked, bewildered. Do you know who I am? The soldier exclaimed, stunned. After all, even the Don Quixote family doesn't know about him, with everyone forgetting his existence as soon as he turned into a toy. Yes. You're Kairos, married to Princess Scarlet, mother of Rebecca, and she is your daughter. That's why you always accompany her. Luffy spoke. Wait. Father. I have a father? Rebecca couldn't be more stunned as she looked at Luffy and the supposed father who had been accompanying her for years while helping her train, but she had never imagined that he would be her father. Yes, the toy in front of you is your father. His name is Kairos, the one you treat as a legend when you see his statue in the arena. He is your father transformed by a devil fruit user, and that makes you forget his existence too. I am the only one who really knows who he is, Luffy said, and at that moment, Rebecca was completely taken aback. She had always heard about the statue of Kairos in the middle of the Colosseum, symbolizing a legendary gladiator that existed, but no one remembered him, like a true legend. Is this really true? She murmured while even Kairos didn't know what to say. Let's leave this reunion for later, we have to get out of Dressrosa. I'll take you with me, and if you want to come along, feel free, Luffy said, not wanting to separate the father from the daughter. They didn't even know how to respond to what they had just heard, and Luffy just sighed as he appeared next to Rebecca, grabbed her by the waist and the toy soldier by the arm, and began to leave before anyone could react, through the hole he had created. As soon as they left, a sword appeared in front of them, as Diamante tried to cut him at that moment, but Luffy maneuvered carrying the two by his side and dodged the attack as Diamante appeared in front of him. Mugiwara! Diamante exclaimed with hatred, ready to launch another attack. Hey, Rebecca, grab your father, I need a free hand, Luffy exclaimed and threw the toy to the girl who caught him, while he advanced towards the high-ranking man from the Don Quixote family. Once again the sword tried to attack him, but making curves in the air with moonwalk and instant transmission, Luffy surprised Diamante, as he delivered a punch to his face, making the makeup-clad man fly backwards, hitting against a building in the city. One down, now the other, Luffy commented as the city transformed in front of him with a giant of houses and rocks emerging. Mugiwara! Pika exclaimed, only 20 meters tall, while Luffy puffed his cheeks. Ha 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 ha. Look at your voice, Pika, I didn't know it was so funny, Luffy exclaimed, unable to stop laughing at the giant, while the toy soldier continued to be held by Rebecca, watching everything here without being able to react properly due to Luffy's incredible speed. You bastard! Pika tried to hit him with a punch. Ha 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 ha. Take that, Pika. Ha 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 ha. Luffy continued laughing and went straight into his punch, hitting it, still laughing. The next moment, the two fists collided, but Luffy didn't give his opponent a chance as his haki was much more powerful, making Pika's fist explode, and Luffy took this opportunity to take off into the sky with Rebecca and the soldier, leaving Dressrosa in chaos with this little fight. Luffy treated them like children, but it wasn't the time for them to interfere with Dressrosa. Chapter 355, Returning to Paradise. Mr. Luffy, I am a bit tired. Rebecca's voice sounded from behind Luffy as she clung tightly to his neck. With a soldier behind her, the girl had a slight blush on her face. Luffy nodded, understanding that this girl, who had been traveling through the night, was exhausted and needed some rest. Alright, let's find a ship, Luffy said and continued across the open sea. They spotted a pirate ship in a corner and advanced towards it in the next moment. Let's choose an island to replenish our supplies before going further into this sea, the captain with a 40 million Bailey's bounty exclaimed as his crew raised their weapons. This ship belonged to a pirate group that had just entered the New World, deciding to sail these waters after the battle in a strong manner, excited to conquer their own territories and make their name in this new era. However, they did not expect an object at high speed to explode from the sky onto the deck, sinking the ship in the next moment. As the ship returned to normal while rocking uncontrollably, the pirates quickly panicked, with most of them falling to the ground unbalanced by the impact. What is that? Enemy attack. Where is it? The pirates quickly exclaimed various words in fear, looking for any ship that might have fired that cannonball at them. Wait, there's someone there. Someone shouted, pointing a finger at the explosion, seeing a shadow emerging from the debris of the wood. As Luffy stepped out from that spot, he appeared in front of them, staring them down. All the men quickly raised their swords at him with a look of caution and anger for invading their ship. Rebecca was already on the ground, approaching him cautiously, waiting for Luffy to deal with the pirates. It was then that the pirates finally realized who was in front of them with his distinctive face and straw hat. Many began to tremble immediately. That's Monkey D. Luffy. The four emperors who without territories. The pirate with a bounty of 3,500,000,000 Baileys. Quickly, exclamations were heard as Luffy scratched his nose, bored with this new way people had of reacting to him now. Drop your weapons. Do you think we can fight him? The captain quickly shouted, making all his men drop their swords, not wanting to present a threat to this monster. As the captain rubbed his hands, he approached Luffy. How can I help you, Lord Luffy? As you can see, we are newly arrived pirates from the New World. Perhaps you would like to recruit us into your fleet? He asked, knowing very well that he couldn't face the monster of Manafort. They were just ants compared to what they saw in the war. Luffy looked at him calmly while shaking his head. I'm not recruiting at the moment. Luffy was direct. I want you to bring me food and water and also a female outfit. I'm tired of feeling these irons resounding on my back. Luffy murmured while Rebecca blushed even more at this comment. Hey, what do you think you're talking about, my daughter? The toy soldier immediately shouted, but Luffy didn't care and continued looking at the pirates. The group quickly started to move after that, and Luffy and the others waited for the pirates to bring what was requested quite quickly and obediently, complying with Luffy's demands to avoid offending him. Lord Luffy, we have prepared a great banquet for you, your girl, and your pet. The pirate captain said, trying to be as polite as possible. Who are you calling a pet? The toy soldier immediately shouted, but Luffy just smiled and began to eat. Rebecca ended up joining him as they sat by the deck. Where's the loot? Bring me alcoholic drinks. Luffy ordered, while the men quickly started bringing him the best they had. Luffy drank and ate while Rebecca ate and rested after changing clothes, putting on a dress that Luffy had to buy in the store because the pirates only had men's clothes. At least now she wasn't showing most of her body anymore. Lord Luffy. Can you give me an autograph? A boy around Rebecca's age approached with Luffy's 3.5 billion poster. Luffy took the paper with a feather, signed it, and handed it to the boy who reminded him a lot of Kobe. The boy was very pleased, and Luffy turned his attention back to the captain. I must admit, this was better than I expected. Luffy murmured at the end and looked at the men who were keeping a watchful eye on him. Well, it seems I said I wasn't recruiting, but if you want to be part of my fleet, I challenge you to survive a year in the New World. Make your own names, and if you've done that and still want to join me, seek me out. You'll know when I'm in the New World. Luffy spoke as the men nodded. It will be an honor, Lord Luffy. The captain exclaimed. Luffy stood up, stretched his body, and looked at them. Tell me your name. He asked the captain. I am Captain Barocos, Lord Luffy. I accept the challenge. We'll survive a year in this sea and then seek you out to be recruited. He said. After all, of all those on the sea at this moment, Luffy was the one everyone saw as the future pirate king. Great, here's a list of crimes I absolutely do not accept under normal conditions. Luffy took a paper from the system and handed it to the captain, who took it and began reading. Luffy heard the man nod in respect to the rules, and he just nodded before picking up Rebecca with a shout, placing the soldier on top of her, and jumping into the air. Luffy soared high, carrying Rebecca like a princess. He left the ship on the other side of the horizon and continued across the sea for the next few hours, following the direction of the two Viva cards until he spotted ships on the other end of the horizon and advanced. It was not just a ship of the Don Quixote family's minions but also a marine ship beside it. These guys are fast. Luffy murmured and advanced with all speed. As he quickly approached, he was attacked with sword slashes coming at him, dodging and keeping Rebecca safe. It's him, he is here. Luffy began to hear the sailors quickly start shouting, stunned, trying to flee from the man worth over 3 billion. Where are you going, you idiots? We can't run from fighting for justice. We must stop this pirate right here. A female voice exclaimed as Luffy saw Giant, who quickly set out with her ship as soon as Virgo made the call. She didn't like that vice admiral, but still, he was a member of the Navy. She took the ship and advanced to Punk Hazard until she found this ship in the middle of the sea. Understanding that it left the island and was frustrated that Luffy had escaped to another place. Luffy had no difficulty in passing through all her attacks and reaching a ship, while Giant pointed her weapon at him, looking angry. "Pirate Monkey D. Luffy. I am here to arrest you and bring you to justice after all your crimes," she exclaimed while everyone looked at Giant a bit cautiously, wondering if she saw what he did in Manafort, be they lackeys or sailors on the ships. Luffy looked with interest. "So you are the famous Giant, Vice Admiral of the Marines, operating in the New World. You are more beautiful than I imagined," Luffy said with a smile, looking at the girl with oriental touches and a mole below her mouth. "He's trying to hit on Vice Admiral Giant." The sailors quickly shouted jealously. "Enough of this crap, pirate," Giant said, advancing towards Luffy. Luffy just looked at her, unfazed by her attacking him. Even without using his devil fruit powers, Luffy could easily handle several vice admirals. Throwing Rebecca up, he dodged Kyo's attack and reappeared behind the woman, and before she could react, Luffy moved to strike and gave her a slap on the butt so hard that it made her fly a few meters before falling, scratching her bottom as she looked at him with a glare of hatred. "You bastard!" she exclaimed, her anger reaching a new level towards Luffy. He slapped the Vice Admiral's butt. "Bastard!" The sailors immediately began shouting. Luffy just smiled. "Don't be like that, Giant, it wasn't that bad," he commented before picking Rebecca up again and placing her on the ground. "Wait a bit, I'll deal with these Marines," he said. In the next moment, he disappeared. Giant, even with immense pain in her right buttock, prepared to face the pirate, and the fight lasted a few more minutes. However, all the Marines were shocked as their Vice Admiral was already on the ground defeated. Luffy looked at them. It didn't take long for him to knock everyone else down with haki while looking at Doflamingo's subordinates, who were trembling as they faced Luffy. "Mr. Luffy, it wasn't our fault," they immediately shouted, not wanting to die. "They appeared out of nowhere and captured us, imprisoning all their prisoners with Chief Gladius," one of them informed. Luffy just nodded. "I'll be right back. So, if you try anything against these girls, I promise you will suffer in hell," he said in a threatening tone, making them all kneel. They all sweated and shouted. "Yes, we will do exactly that. We will protect them with our lives," they exclaimed as Luffy boarded the marine ship. Caesar was conflicted, wondering if it was worse or better to go with a demon or go to Impel Down. However, he had no choice, he was now on a marine ship heading to Impel Down. But that changed when he saw Luffy entering the area and breaking the door with an explosion. "Well, it looks like you were trying to escape from me, but you wouldn't get far," Luffy commented while breaking into Caesar's cell, dragging him out with an expression of fear and anger, also grabbing Monet, leaving only Gladius in one of the cells. "Why are you taking me to?" Monet asked. She could understand him taking her from Punk Hazard, but now directly, and even so, he still insisted on taking her. "Well, I need an assistant. Vivi can't handle everything alone," Luffy said, and Monet looked at him strangely, not remembering agreeing to obey at any point, but Luffy didn't care. He went back outside, reflecting. "I only have 2 hands, I can't take everyone at once like this," he murmured until he looked at Caesar, who stared at him with a glint in his eyes, while the mad scientist did not like that at all. In the next moment, Caesar found himself tied in a chain, while Luffy grabbed Monet and Rebecca by the waist, with a third woman tied to his back. Rebecca was holding the toy soldier. Then Luffy jumped into the air and started to ascend while Caesar screamed as he was pulled by a chain in the air, trying not to curse due to the humiliation. Luffy left Gladius still in the prison with Doflamingo's subordinates to free him. Luffy had nothing more to do with them and proceeded to the first part of the Grand Line. "Mr. Luffy, why are you taking this marine?" Rebecca couldn't help but ask, looking strangely at Giant being carried by Luffy unconsciously. "I didn't want to leave her here alone, in a place full of pirates, while the Marines are down. I'm doing this for her safety," Luffy said, thinking of dropping her off at Sabati. And so he continued. He did not pass through the middle of the Red Line, which would be the shortest route to Sabati. However, there was Mary Joyce, and he certainly would not be welcomed if seen by the Gorosei. So, he followed around several kilometers of the city until he passed to the side of the Paradise, in the middle of the calm belt, almost entering the East Blue, and then proceeded to his final destination on his eternal pose, which was Sabati. He only had these destinations on his 3 eternal poses, Punk Hazard, Dressrosa, and Sabati, finally heading to the last point to finish his journey and its final details before returning to Skypiea. Chapter 356, Bonnie's Response. The Straw Hat crew was in Shakayaku's bar at the moment, having arrived without alerting anyone, with the ship hidden in the air among the trees thanks to Bippo's power, while everyone was gathered around talking to Rayleigh about the war. Bartolomeo was turned to stone in the middle of the place. "Why is this person still turned to stone?" Kuina complained, looking at the man with a strange expression. "We should save him. Does anyone know the cure for petrification?" "Lami?" Chopper exclaimed, But Lami wasn't paying attention, fighting Reiju in the middle of the bar. A bottle broke in the middle of the place while Shakayaka watched due to the fight between the two women. "You spilled a good whiskey, so that'll be 1 billion Baileys," he announced. "What do you mean 1 billion Baileys?" Nami immediately exclaimed with a grimace. "Hey, uncle. You really were in the Pirate King's crew, Ace's father?" Nearby, Lucy was looking at Rayleigh while drinking. "You could say that. And you left the Marines to become a pirate to save your family. You're very brave," he commented. "Yes, I wouldn't let Ace die." "Shh. Lucy said with a smile. "What a noise, this is too much for a god." Onel complained nearby, while Hugo stood next to him with crossed arms. Domino was also quietly in a corner. "Catch this." Usopp was throwing a rubber ball for Chao Chu to fetch in the middle of the bar. Woof. Chao Chu was playing without any issues, picking up the ball before bringing it back to Usopp. "Ha ha ha ha." Yamato was laughing at the counter. They seemed to be having a lot of fun. Robin said, sitting next to him. "How long will it take for Luffy to get here?" "They'll destroy the bar before he shows up and that woman won't charge cheap." Nojiko commented. Vivi near the window was startled when a huge finger touched her from behind, and she looked at the window with the finger sticking out while a huge eye appeared, with Shirahoshi looking at them from outside the bar. "There's someone here wanting to speak to Luffy-sama," Shirahoshi announced. "Someone wanting to see Luffy?" Alvida commented, going to see who it was. "Where's the Meister? I prepared these delicious explosive cookies." Baby 5 murmured, crying, while her food was getting cold. "How scary!" Vippo exclaimed. "Nay. That doesn't look very good, maybe you should use takoyaki," Haki suggested. "Hey, don't give her ideas," Usopp shouted. Alvida appeared with a pink-haired woman walking firmly on the ground. "Where is Straw Hat?" she demanded, as if losing her pride. "I don't know. Luffy must have gotten lost on the way," Zoro responded, drinking alcohol while everyone looked at him strangely. "Don't forget to pay 2 billion for the sake, Swordsman-san," Shakayaku requested. "Hey, you're trying to rob us," Nami exclaimed furiously at the bar woman, while she smoked without caring about it. "Luffy will be here soon, he has the eternal pose to the island," Nojiko responded. "All right. I'll wait for him," Bonnie said, sitting in a place while looking to the side with a huge eye staring at her. "I always liked looking at your hair, it looks so much like mine." "Bonnie-sama," Shirahoshi commented. "Don't stare at me like that." Bonnie was slightly startled by the giant mermaid. It was a moment later that Usopp and Enel sensed something with their observation Haki before everyone else. "Luffy is coming," Usopp exclaimed while it didn't take long for the others to feel it, and the next moment, someone descended from the sky landing in front of the bar with Shirahoshi beside him. "Finally we're back," Luffy commented with a smile, looking at their destination finally found. "Luffy-sama," Shirahoshi immediately exclaimed to Luffy, while he opened a smile. "Hello wife, we'll soon be home and you can have a space to gather with everyone," Luffy said while placing Rebecca and Monet on the ground. "Hey, what is this?" Nami immediately looked at Luffy with an unsatisfied tone. "I'm seeing 2 women with you, not 3. You damn womanizer," she exclaimed angrily. "I only brought important people for our crew," Luffy said and pointed to Cesar in a slightly defeated state chained up. "I brought a scientist, an assistant, and a princess," Luffy declared. "Who is this marine woman?" Vivi also appeared, looking suspiciously at Luffy. "Luffy!" Lucy exclaimed from the door, her 2 arms stretching out to grab Luffy. She approached a moment later, placing her face against Luffy's cheek until she noticed someone behind him. "Wait, this is Zion." Luffy was surprised. "It's Zion, Lucy," Luffy said, laughing. "Anyway, how are things, everyone?" Luffy asked them. "We arrived early in the morning on the island and have been waiting for you since then," Yamato replied, after they had left Fishman Island and returned to the surface with a small farewell from the fisherman. "That's good, we just need to do a few more things, and then we'll head to Skypiea," Luffy said, satisfied, and started to walk. "Now let's go inside, I need to drink something," he said, leaving Monet, Caesar, and Giant tied up outside the bar while he entered. Luffy walked into the place with most of his crew and was surprised to see someone he didn't expect to be there. "Wait, is that Bartolomeo? What's he doing here?" he said, surprised, seeing a petrified man. "Wait, is Hancock here too?" he asked, not sensing her presence. "That's not what happened," Usopp said. "He just showed up here, then started exclaiming all our names and suddenly turned to stone," he said with a confused tone. "Luffy, do you think this is a disease?" Chopper immediately asked. No, he'll be fine," Luffy shook his head and said before slapping the statue on its neck. And you're going to kill him like that? Chopper shouted, closing his eyes, but it was too late. The slap on the statue immediately undid the transformation, leaving everyone shocked as the green-haired man fell to the ground. I was having the best dream of my life, where I saw the straw hats in a bar I randomly entered. Bartolomeo began to murmur but didn't give up on his dream and got up, looking around. Where are the straw hats? He exclaimed, still thinking he was dreaming. He turned his face and found someone he didn't expect, Monkey D. Luffy, in front of him, who looked at him indifferently, seeing this peculiar pirate who was supposed to be his fan with this kind of reaction. Bartolomeo looked at Luffy speechlessly for seconds while everyone watched the scene in the bar, and suddenly, he turned to stone once again. He turned to stone again. Everyone shouted simultaneously. What a strange guy. Luffy began to laugh. Leave him be, he's just a fan. Luffy said in the end. That's a fan? Kuina murmured, surprised. To me, he's a subject. Onel said. Wolf. Chow Chu went next to Bartolomeo and peed on his stone foot. You peed in my bar, 500 million in damages. Shakayaka warned. Luffy laughed a little and approached the counter. Give me a good alcoholic drink, Shakayaku. He requested while the woman brought a bottle of whiskey. That'll be 5 billion Baileys. She demanded. Hey, hey. Luffy murmured, but in the end, he drank. Master, I made these takoyaki. Baby 5 approached with a loving expression, handing the food to Luffy after Ecchi suggested making them. Luffy thanked her and ate with the drink, before his mouth exploded, inflating his cheeks, and he only let out smoke from his mouth without any damage. It's not as good as Ecchi's, but it's an explosion of flavor. Luffy said in the end. I'm glad you liked it, Master. Baby 5 said, placing her hands on her cheeks like a lovesick girl. Rebecca, this man is dangerous. The soldier who entered the bar with his daughters saw Luffy's relationship with the women and immediately disliked it. Rebecca was speechless, seeing that strange crew. Then, unaware of the thoughts of these last two, Luffy turned his attention away from Baby 5 and looked to the side where Rayleigh was drinking. Have you thought about what I said? He asked while the older man smiled. Yes, I will go with you. He said in the end, and Luffy smiled, satisfied. Great, now. First of all, let me introduce our new crew member on the main ship. This is the Princess of Dressrosa. I kidnapped her, and next to her, her father, turned into a toy. Luffy said, leaving everyone a bit surprised. Why did you bring a princess from Dressrosa, Luffy? Nojiko asked, but unlike her sister, she was just curious. It's simple because I desire Dressrosa as our territory in a year, and when we take down what's left of the Don Quixote family, we'll enter a war against Kaido, and at that moment, I want to have someone from that country as a member of my crew, like most of our territories. Luffy declared. He also had plans for Viola but would leave that for the future. Then Luffy began introducing everyone to the new crew member. They started talking among themselves for the next few hours, while he finally noticed the girl in the corner of the bar next to Domino, looking at him like a hawk. He sighed and stood up. Come, Bonnie, let's talk. He said and began to walk away. Bonnie followed him a moment later as they moved a bit away from the bar to talk. Can you really save my father? Besides, your crew members beat him up. I hope he's alive, otherwise, I'll kill you. Bonnie accused, and Luffy just smiled, seeing only a daughter wanting the best for her father. He'll be fine. After the war we fight in Wano, we'll go to Egghead, where we'll find the cure for your father with Dr. Vegapunk, and I promise to do everything in my power for that. Luffy declared, and despite her frustration, Bonnie looked serious before nodding, trusting Luffy's words. And Joy Boy, are you really serious about that? She couldn't help but ask. Yes, but she's not ready for it yet. But in a year, I'll make sure Joy Boy is finally in this world. Luffy said. Why don't you say who it is once and for all? Bonnie looked at him with suspicious eyes. It's still a secret. Luffy declared. In the end, Bonnie nodded, and a system message saying Bonnie was officially a member of his crew appeared in front of Luffy. More pink-haired women, Luffy thought, now having 5 of them in his crew. That's great. You have a crew here, right? I'll ask Bippo to accompany you to your ship, and he'll bring you flying back here. Luffy said, and Bonnie nodded. Bippo ended up leaving with Bonnie shortly after, heading to her ship. In the end, Luffy still chatted a bit with his crew while the festive atmosphere returned to normal, as always, the same atmosphere that had started since the beginning of their journey, in East Blue, to this point. It was only after some time, with Bippo arriving with a ship picked up from one of the docks with Bonnie and also bringing a ship with Luffy's face on it, along with Bartolomeo's crew, as Luffy had asked his mink, that they began to prepare to depart. Black Pearl started descending at this moment. In the end, everyone began boarding the ship, including the official crew, Rayleigh, and a petrified Bartolomeo. "Ah, help me!" Caesar exclaimed, but Hugo was taking him to the prison while Reiju ended up taking Monet. Mujiwara. Jian woke up at this moment while Luffy approached her. "Here you're safe," he said, while the woman looked at Luffy, confused. "Zion!" Lucy also exclaimed, seeing her awake while waving cheerfully at her. "Lucy, did you really leave the Marines?" she murmured, while Lucy, already over such things, just stuck her tongue out at her. Her gaze fell on Luffy. "Why did you bring me here?" She saw him approaching until he got close enough to cut her ropes and hand her sword back, leaving the woman stunned and confused. "I brought you from the other world precisely so no one would hurt you. Here you're safe. You can return to the Marines, Benitna," Luffy said, leaving Giant speechless next to Shakayaku, smoking a cigarette, watching Luffy jump onto the ship as it began to take off to the sky along with all the other ships that belonged to Luffy. Now their next stop was Amazon Lily since they were going to remove the entire island from the location while more than 7 ships departed, flying from this Sabati towards the Com Belt. Chapter 357, Get Ready for Order 66. Vice Admiral Jian was left in Sabiti and is coming through the route that leads to the New World via the Red Line. An officer said at a temporary marine base near Mary Joais, as Sengoku listened to the report with his senior officers. The mood wasn't good for the Marines since the beginning of the war, with pirate activity starting worldwide stronger than it had been in the first weeks after the Pirate King's death and the announcement of the One Piece. This was due to, besides the sea changing, the defeat of the Navy giving a sense of daring to all outlaws with the Navy at such a low point. And now to help matters, Straw Hat had started moving right after the war. "I want the complete report on Monkey D. Luffy," Sengoku requested to an officer who nodded as he picked up a sheet and began to read aloud to everyone there. Pirate activities began reaching a new peak worldwide, and just over a week later, the Whitebeard pirates were spotted returning to the New World without the Straw Hats. But Captain Straw Hat appeared in the New World. His first recorded activity was on Punk Hazard with Vice Admiral Virgo, warning of his death by the pirate captain. "We don't know why Virgo was there. But we are now aware that there was a scientist wanted by the government who had worked with Dr. Vegapunk for many years. Luffy captured him and Virgo tried to stop it but ended up dying brutally," he began. "How was Virgo there?" someone asked. "We don't know, only that he told his subordinates he would be going out but didn't notify where. But there's something related to the pirates of the late 7 warlords of the seas Doflamingo," the man said. "Strange. We need to investigate this later, but now it doesn't matter, continue the report," Sengoku requested and the man continued reading. After that, he went to Dressrosa, invaded the country, entered the arena, and kidnapped the granddaughter of the former king of Dressrosa, Riku, the 14-year-old Princess Rebecca, who was kept in the arena as punishment for her family's crimes and had to fight every day, to be humiliated. He read, despite grimacing at this part. "Keeping a child in that way? Has Dressrosa fallen so far?" Tsaru couldn't help but comment. "We don't have much activity in the country due to it belonging to a 7 warlords of the seas." Another replied, but with dissatisfaction. "Another reason to destroy this system." Another suggested. "We still need them. We have to fill the vacancies that are missing and we have some ideal candidates," Sengoku said. "Even if it makes Zeph leave the Navy, you know he will do that if we invite that guy." Tsaru spoke to Sengoku. "This is the decision of the world government, we can't do anything more about it," Sengoku said and looked at the man with the sheet in his hand for him to continue. Monkey D. Luffy managed to get out of the country even though the former members of the Don Quixote family tried to stop him, they weren't successful. He returned to the start of the New World, where he encountered Giant anticipating the ship that came from Punk Hazard and Straw Hat defeated all the Marines there, easily. He took Caesar Crown and another assistant of his from the Marine ship along with the defeated Giant herself and took everyone to Sabati. He spoke but was interrupted by a frustrated tone. "So he got the better of us, how did we not catch him?" A person with a cigar snarled. "There are many ways to get around Mary Joais. You shouldn't be surprised and Straw Hat is certainly not dumb." Another replied. The man sighed and continued. He met his crew and left shortly after with some more crews. Reports say people saw ships in the port flying out to the middle of the island. He said. "The damn one is recruiting more members for his own force," Sengoku said. "There was a member of the worst generation who didn't leave with the others, wasn't there?" he asked. "Yes, Bonnie. Kizaru was the one who answered that." "That's bad. The government was interested in her," Sengoku said. "What happened next?" Kyuzan asked. "They took their ship and left without anyone seeing. Then they left the island." The man from the report spoke in front of everyone as they pondered everything they had heard. Everyone there had fought in the war and was trying to find a solution to all the problems it had brought. Garp was not present, as he was not in the right headspace for this, And Sengoku did not complain while he was heading to the East Blue. Monkey D. Luffy did not kill Giant. Maybe we can use her? Someone suggested. Giant is not a prostitute. Don't you dare say that again. Tsuru immediately growled. Giant was her pupil. She would never let her go on a mission to seduce a pirate. How are the states of the 7 warlords of the seas? Sengoku asked. Moria is fine, as is Mihawk, but Kuma is not doing well and we need to take him to Dr. Vegapunk. The man from the report spoke. Alright, Kyuzen, I want you to go after the new 7 warlords of the seas candidates. Sengoku started while the latter nodded. Kizaru, I want you to go to Egghead and escort Kuma. He said to the man who also nodded. His gaze fell on the last man there, missing a part of his body. Akainu. We need to give a response to Boa Hancock for having betrayed us. The government does not want you to capture or kill her, but also to destroy the island of women with a buster call. The man sitting in a corner smoking his cigar nodded. He was now a mad dog, ready to kill anyone who had hindered him from destroying the pirates at Manaford. Now was his chance to finally find one of those responsible for the death of the Navy. I will make them all pay. He growled, wanting to kill Boa Hancock. Akainu had lost an arm and should not even be here with this injury, but as someone with hatred at its peak, he would not wait to heal before acting. I'll prepare the fleet, I'm waiting for you guys outside. Akainu spoke as he stood up. After all, he did not want to wait any longer and the vice admirals should follow him in the buster call. Sengoku said nothing and turned back to the men. The government is not at all happy with us, even more so since we let the user of the float fruit model, Flying Human Devil Fruit, live and the Straw Hat after he showed unbelievable power. He said. We have to succeed in all our missions. Straw Hat is without the power of his fruits. Isn't this a chance to kill him? Someone suggested. We are working on that, but do not forget that he is much stronger than a vice admiral, maybe even than an admiral in this state, but we cannot let him reach his peak again. That's why we will silence him on all the islands of this world. Sengoku spoke before sighing. This will be my last mission. After all, I am leaving the position of Fleet Admiral. This war was a failure that I cannot let pass. Sengoku spoke as everyone nodded, understanding the situation. I recommend Kyuzen as the future successor. He continued while Kyuzen listened to that and nodded. However, the government wants someone else. So we will have to talk about this in the future. For now let's focus on the Straw Hats. Sengoku declared and everyone started nodding as they left the room, going to do their missions. The ships soon began to leave the temporary base, as everyone left filled with 10 vice admirals, 20 pacifistas, and 1 admiral, advancing towards the calm belt. Meanwhile, the Straw Hat ships, almost reaching these waters, did not go directly to the island of women, while following a record of a ship that was now in sight of them before entering the calm belt. It was just a regular ship, and of all the 7 flying ships, Black Pearl was the only one that began to descend, landing next to it. Hey guys. Luffy jumped from ship as he met this group that had left the island of the fishmen sometime after his crew. Mugiwara boy. Ivankov complained, spinning as if he was dancing ballet, and raised his hands in a pose. Mugiwara-san. The members of the transvestite yelled at the same time while Luffy smiled at his friends, and the members on the Black Pearl also exclaimed, greeting everyone. I thought you were going to the New World, to meet with the revolutionaries. Luffy commented to Ivankov. Not yet. I have to organize my kingdom as king, before meeting your father, my dear. Ivankov said and winked at Luffy, who just laughed at his friend. Do you not want to work for me? Luffy couldn't help but ask, already knowing the answer. I can't, since I already work for your father, for the Revolutionary Army. Ivankov spoke calmly with a smile. Alright. Luffy nodded. Even so, there's someone I'd like you to train in Alabasta. Can you stay with this member for a year? Luffy asked, referring to Bon Clay. Of course, after all, we're allies. I'll take very good care of your friend. Ivankov exclaimed, and Luffy nodded, handing over a Denden Mushi to contact him. Speaking of which, did Crocodile decide to stay on the Fishman Island? Luffy asked. Yes. Croco Boy said he would go to the New World alone. Ivankov responded. I see. Alright then, let's get going. Luffy said, looking at the crew member who was on this ship. Yes. Jinbai nodded as he followed Luffy. Ivankov and his group stayed on the Fishman Island to get in touch with the Revolutionary Army, while Jinbai still had some mess to clean up that he and the royal family had worked on after the celebrations concerning Holy Jones, like his public execution, happening a little after the Black Pearl had left. Goodbye Ivankov. Folks. Luffy exclaimed as the Black Pearl started to fly again. Goodbye Ivankov-sama. Shira Hoshi exclaimed. God Ivankov. Lucy also bid farewell, as did many others. Goodbye. Everyone on the other ships also exclaimed, and they headed for the beginning of paradise. Luffy nodded and turned back to all his crew members gathered. Keep Cesar and Monet on the ship for now, we're going to the Island of Women. Luffy instructed while Bippo started steering the ships toward that area. Luffy sat in a corner of the ship where there were several Den Mushi. He picked up the main Den Mushi and began giving orders. Attention all our allies, I want everyone to get ready to enter a state of preparation, we are going to start preparing for Order 66. Luffy said as all the kingdoms and fleet listened to this order. It was the command to prepare with full force for the events that would start in a few years. Chapter 358, Removing the Slave Mark. The calm belt sea stirred suddenly, but it wasn't due to a sea king prowling these waters. Instead, ships with considerable military force sliced through the waters, passing all the islands in the sea, heading towards a single destination. There were 20 Navy warships, with 10 vice admirals and 1 admiral, all loaded to explode the Island of Women and destroy Boa Hancock, the 7 warlords of the seas who had turned against the Navy. Okainu stared with fierce eyes at the horizon, eagerly waiting to act against the traitors who had brought dishonor to the Navy. Seconds turned into minutes, and then an hour passed. He grew frustrated as nothing appeared on the horizon where an island should have been emerging. Where is Amazon Lily? He growled to himself. Admiral Okainu. Some sailors approached at that moment with cautious looks. What's wrong? Why isn't the island appearing? Did we take a wrong route? I swear whoever did this will pay dearly. Okainu exclaimed angrily. It's not that. We're on the right path. But. The man seemed hesitant and lost. We reviewed the route and the Navy's maps for the region. The island should have appeared by now. In fact, we passed where it should have been more than an hour ago. He said. What do you mean? Okainu growled. The island disappeared, he declared, leaving Okainu stunned as the ships were almost entering the east blue through the calm belt. Meanwhile, a huge island traveled through the sky, above the clouds, continuing to fly over paradise after leaving the calm belt unnoticed, only occasionally casting a massive shadow over some islands, with anyone witnessing it assuming it was just a cloud. On this island, which was indeed Amazon Lily, dozens of women looked from the edge of the island as they gazed at the clouds around them, excitedly exclaiming at the unique view in their lives while traveling over 10,000 meters in the air. Luffy's crew was all present on the island along with his friends and allies, leaving all the ships stationary in the middle of the island, while a huge festival began with all the island's women welcoming the Straw Hats in a grand feast. As night fell with Bippo still steering the island towards Skypiea, Luffy struggled to please so many wives gathered, especially Hancock who wanted to spend hours in the act with Luffy, without anyone interrupting, but even with her dissatisfaction, she shared a bed with other women, staying for at least 2 days behind closed doors until Luffy seemed to emerge tired at the end, leaving the room alone. Don't you ever settle down, boy? What kind of life is this? Don't you even go out to eat? Gloriosa exclaimed as soon as she saw Luffy leaving the women sleeping. Do you think just some women can bring me down? Luffy challenged her, but he looked at her with dark circles under his eyes. You're clearly tired. She grimaced. Ha 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 ha. Don't be like that, now tell me what's been happening these 2 days? Luffy asked laughing. Well, your crew is scattered across the island, but Amazon Lily is turning into chaos. She exclaimed, shaking her staff. First, your sister is depleting the island's food supply. She began. Then that swordsman of yours got lost and cut down a mountain to find the city again. What kind of person needs to cut a mountain to get back to the city? Well, Zoro is predictable in that regard. Luffy commented, holding back laughter. There's also a lunatic claiming he's a god. Now the women of this island are wondering if men are gods. She exclaimed unsatisfied. Enel. Another predictable one. Luffy murmured. There's also an extremely angry girl on this island. She's turning everyone into children while asking for pizza, something we don't have on the island. She spoke, and Luffy immediately knew. She's mad because we beat up her dad. Luffy shrugged it off. As for the others, they're doing strange things. But nothing as noticeable as these first 3. Gloriosa said at the end a bit more calmly. I see. Anyway, I promised something, you can call Hancock's sisters, we'll start removing her brand. Luffy requested and the door behind him immediately opened with Hancock looking at him with shining eyes. Really, my love? She exclaimed, jumping on Luffy, while he just let her hug him tightly without resisting. A smitten empress. Gloriosa murmured and went to call the other 2 sisters. A moment later she arrived while they looked nervously at Luffy being embraced by Hancock. Luffy looked at them and pulled Hancock away from his side. Now that you're here, prepare a special room where we can be alone. I'm going to fetch 2 people. Luffy declared and went back to the room. Hey, what are you doing? A female voice was heard. Just put this on, we have something to do. Luffy spoke. Hey, I thought you liked seeing me naked. I do appreciate you two naked, believe me, but I need you out there. Put on this dress," Luffy declared as he opened the doors, taking two women by the waist as they came out tired from the room. Luffy followed the Boa sisters, and they went to a special room, where Luffy gave instructions to Lami and Reiju. As you can see, they have a mark on their backs. Lami will be in charge of cutting their skin to remove the ink and Reiju will regenerate it with the phoenix flames. Luffy spoke, while the two women, still sleepy, nodded at the end. "Don't interfere, you hear? Do your job and I'll do mine, got it?" Both started to argue quickly. "Are we going to be okay?" Marigold murmured fearfully. "Of course you will, just," Luffy said before slapping each on the head. "Stop fighting and help these sisters," Luffy exclaimed. They finally stopped while even Boa Sandersonia watched cautiously, but Hancock didn't care as she continued to gaze at Luffy. "I'm going to leave now. You can start," Luffy said and left the room as he began to wander through the castle, pausing at a painting of Lily. "She's a copy of Vivi," Luffy murmured. "She's not." Gloriosa approached. "Yeah. I learned a bit about her life in the Lost Century from a poneglyph in Alabasta," Luffy murmured. "But there are still doubts about her, aren't there?" Gloriosa couldn't help noticing that in Luffy's look. "Yes. There are things I still don't understand. Important things," he admitted. "Why didn't him tear up Vivi's poster like he did with Luffy, Blackbeard, and Shirahoshi? Why did he keep it? He has a painting just like this one. What's his relationship with Lily and is he interested or planning something for my Vivi? I'll kill him." Luffy debated internally while still looking at Lily and what her real motive was for spreading the poneglyphs around the world. Why not accept going to marry Joey's and what interest him had behind it all? There were so many secrets, but he would uncover them by the end of his journey and knew he was destined to fight against him. His thoughts were interrupted when a sound of thunder emerged at one of the windows and Luffy sighed, wondering what this guy wanted now. After all, he was there to talk to him. "I'm going to see what Enel wants," Luffy told Gloriosa, while she waited for Luffy's two crew members to remove the slave mark from the sisters. "Tell me, Enel." Luffy stepped out onto the balcony with the former god of Skypiea sitting there looking at him with a calm expression. "I'm leaving," he spoke. "You're leaving?" Luffy looked at him a bit confused. "You will return to Skypiea and train everyone, but I don't want to be a part of that. I'm going to do my own training." He spoke seriously. "What are your plans?" Luffy asked, although surprised, he wasn't upset. After all, Enel's presence would cause discord with the former inhabitants of the Sky Kingdom, although it could also be good training for everyone. "I'm going to the moon," he declared. "Well, I see nothing wrong with that, as long as you don't come back weak from this trip." Luffy spoke. "I will be so strong that I could defeat you, demon. Then I will become a god," Enel said confidently and mockingly, but Luffy didn't mind. "I hope so. After all, even in this state, I can defeat you. I don't want weak people in what's about to happen in this world, not in my main crew," Luffy declared while Enel clicked his tongue. "Do not underestimate me. My destiny is to become the god of this world and I will prove it to everyone by subjugating you," Enel said in his usual tone. "You said you will spend a year in training, so I will leave in 1 year and fulfill my dream of going to the moon," he spoke. "Be that as it may, if you are leaving, we can't stay with the Tenri Obito while they will be detected by the Vivre cards from Mary Joyce," Luffy said. After all, it was Enel who was blocking that. "Those false gods." Enel scoffed. "Take them with you, do whatever you want with them, it doesn't matter to me," Luffy said, indifferent to whatever suffering they might endure at Enel's hands. "That sounds interesting. I can show the false gods what a true god is like." Enel seemed pleased with the idea. "I'm going then," he declared and Luffy nodded. Enel transformed into a bolt of lightning and went to Black Pearl, taking the prisoners with Hugo's help and went to his ark, beginning to place them in his vessel before starting to head towards the sky. "Where is Enel going?" Nojiko approached at that moment next to Robin. "He will have different plans for the next year, so let him be," Luffy spoke, returning inside again. "We're done." Reiju came out of the room with Lami at that moment. "Ah!" A cry of joy erupted from the other side of the door, as the three sisters seemed overwhelmed by their disappearing brand, and it wasn't long before they came out and rushed to Luffy, embracing him. "Thank you," they cried and shouted at the same time. "I just made the suggestion, it was Lami and Reiju who did it," Luffy murmured, being crushed. This continued for a while until Luffy finally managed to calm them down, at least two of them, while Hancock continued to cling to him. "Well, if we're here celebrating, let's have a big feast today," Luffy declared as his other women also came out of the room, and they organized a grand feast at that moment for the rest of the day going into the next, with Amazon Lily not far from Skypiea as the islands began to appear at that moment. Chapter 359, New Members for the Fleet. You're going out again? Nami looked past Vivi to Luffy. There's another group of people nearby, I can meet them without drawing attention while I plan to recruit them. Luffy told his entire crew. No one could disagree with that as Luffy nodded. They were almost reaching Skypiea and Luffy wanted to see a few more people he had secretly kept Vivre cards for, to follow them in the near future, which would be used at this moment. After all, his fleet needed new powerful members. I want you all to organize everything in Skypiea, see what damage the prison break has caused and check on the rest of the crew. I'll head there when I can. Luffy spoke again before leaving Amazon Lily, floating through the air. He quickly advanced over the blue sea using moonwalk as he spotted some islands, but he followed his Vivre card directly to a specific one. It was a small island, where there was a port village, trading fish, and resources that some pirates bought to stock up their supplies. With the fall of the Marines, their ports were busier than ever, while everyone laughed and even fought with each other. The pirates themselves fought to preserve the town. After all, if it lacked resources to fill their ships, they would be without a place to refuel on their journeys. In a tavern where pirates met, it was quiet at this moment, while a man watched attentively ahead, being the tavern keeper. He used to work in Jaya, but the island was destroyed by powerful pirates fighting against each other, so he decided to open his bar here but ended up encountering one of the pirates involved in the chaos of Jaya's destruction. This same man seemed in a bad mood as he hit everyone else present, and the entire bar was full of bodies thrown around. He was cautious despite not wanting a fight in his bar. He didn't have the courage to contradict this pirate. Give me more alcohol. The blonde man demanded while the bartender, with no choice, nodded. He still remembers that everything started with that supernova kid starting a fight with this man in his bar, who got beaten so badly that Doflamingo came to Jaya and the chaos began even with the arrival of the beast pirates and Monkey D. Luffy himself. I still remember that pirate kid wanting to go after Straw Hat back then. Surely the man had no idea who he was dealing with. The man quickly dismissed this thought and went to the drink showcase to get another bottle to hand to the pirate before he became the target of his fury. As soon as he placed the bottle on the table, the doors burst open at that moment, while the owner looked up with a furrowed brow, knowing he could be yet another victim of this frustrated lunatic. Bellamy. The voice of the stranger said as he began to enter the bar. The owner finally began to see who was entering the place and couldn't be more shocked, as he froze completely standing in that position, seeing that man of all people at sea at this moment, entering his bar. Bellamy turned around at this moment, frustrated, to see who had called him, but as soon as he saw Luffy, he recognized him immediately. You? He was furious about everything that had started happening months ago, having left his pirate group after learning of Doflamingo's death at Maniford. He didn't know what to do anymore. After all, Doflamingo was the person he most admired in this world, a person he wanted to become. And standing in front of him was none other than Monkey D. Luffy, the one who had overcome Doflamingo, had him imprisoned in Jaya, and had crew members so powerful that one of them ended the life of the one he most admired in the world. I see you're handling your frustration in a rather odd way. Luffy spoke calmly, practically mocking Bellamy. What are you doing here? Bellamy demanded immediately, but Luffy just smiled. Isn't it obvious? I came here to recruit you. You seem lost here. He said. Bellamy really was lost, but his plans were to go to the New World and speak with the remnants of the Don Quixote family members to find out what their plans were, looking for a new path in his life. Why would I join you? Bellamy immediately questioned. The last crew he would think of joining were the Straw Hats themselves. However, Luffy didn't care about his response as he approached. You don't understand, I'm not asking you a question or giving you an option. Luffy spoke, and Bellamy only had time to stand up as his head was grabbed by Luffy's hand and smashed onto the counter, falling the next moment while even the bartender, who had been frozen, jumped back scared and looked at Luffy cautiously and trembling. The same thing you did to Luffy. Luffy thought about the original story and found it satisfying to do this to Bellamy. He looked at the trembling man in front of him now. Take this for the damages. Luffy said as he threw a bag of Baileys to the man. The man couldn't even respond, as much as he didn't want this pirate's money, but also, it could offend him and he just remained silent. Luffy grabbed Bellamy and dragged him out of the tavern, shooting up into the sky while the rumors of Monkey D. Luffy appearing on the island quickly spread to everyone, causing pirates to start moving around looking for the pirate for a rare chance to join his fleet. However, Luffy was already far away, traveling with an unconscious Bellamy, secured by his own clothes by Luffy as he approached another island. This next island was a mid-sized kingdom subordinate to the world government, with a large marine outpost and good trade, especially in rice and other agricultural foods. Even their ports were bustling with the construction of ships, from small to medium-sized vessels, and with a huge amount of fishermen selling seafood at the market that gathered tens of thousands of people every week. But this was not important to Luffy, as he traveled over the country, crossing over the king's palace and continuing through the middle of the capital. Meanwhile, in a place below him, there was a small warehouse. In this place, there was a small group of people gathered there, while some seemed quite injured with bandages, others looked fine, but still tired. "We need to get out of this kingdom soon," one of them commented while the others agreed. This was the former Cypher Pol 9 agent, with the members having to flee after the events that occurred at NI's lobby, being marked as outlaws by the government chasing them. The former government agents had no choice but to flee, and the pursuit intensified even more with the fall of Manafort, with high-ranking members being relocated to capture them. Their last encounter with their pursuers did not end very well, as they faced a member of Cypher Pol 0 agent in person and managed to escape by luck, but Rob Lucci ended up injured along with others to have a chance to flee. They were trying to recover while staying hidden in that warehouse. "It's getting harder and harder," Mia Khalifa murmured as she tended to Lucci's wounds. "This is really bad," Kiko murmured, keeping an arm supported after being broken. "I knew we'd be betrayed by our own organization one day," Jabra exclaimed furiously. "We made a mistake, so we're disposable," Rob Lucci said as if he accepted his situation very well. "How can you speak so naturally about this?" Jabra complained again. "Anyway, let's head to South Blue. We can pass through the comm belt flying with Moonwalk," Bueno said, and the others agreed. "That's right, let's just rest here today and leave this island," Lucci spoke at the end. But at that moment, the door of the warehouse simply opened and everyone went into combat mode, looking with surprise and caution as a shadow cast in front of the sun. He began to enter the place, as his figure finally became visible, and their old enemy, Monkey D. Luffy, entered the place, finding them finally, still carrying an unconscious Bellamy while all the other members looked stunned. "Straw Hat." Lucci immediately frowned and clenched his teeth. "How did you find us?" Khalifa immediately exclaimed. "I don't think that matters now." Luffy shrugged as he approached them. "Anyway, I'm here to give you a chance beyond just running away through all the blues until you're captured again by the world government," Luffy explained. "What do you mean?" Lucci narrowed his eyes. "Simple. If you want to come work for me, I'll give you security to escape from the world government. After all, you were only pursued for failing your mission," he said, leaving the Cypher Pol 9 agent members even more surprised. Luffy wasn't so desperate to hire them, so he let them choose, unlike Bellamy, who was forcibly taken. They looked at each other for a while, seeming to think, when finally someone stepped up to Luffy. "Let me work for you." Bueno spoke. "Bueno, what are you doing? You're going to trust him?" Khalifa exclaimed, but Bueno shrugged. "Do we have much choice? At least he is powerful enough to ward off the government, and I'd rather work against the government at this point," he said, still frustrated with the situation, so he didn't think twice before accepting Luffy's request. "Good," Luffy murmured, pleased with this. Of all there, Bueno was the one he was most interested in. After all, he possessed an important fruit, one he even considered stealing after killing him before delivering him to Anai's lobby, but Luffy wasn't so cruel as to kill a prisoner. "Sorry, guys, but I also see no way out in continuing to run from the government. At least we'll be aligning with someone powerful," Jabra declared, leaving the other members looking at him with furrowed brows, while Jabra walked up to Bueno who knelt before Luffy and did the same. The others thought a bit, and many looked at Rob Lucci, seeing what he would choose, but he simply shook his head. "I won't ally with you, much less intend to work for you," he finally spoke, and Luffy wasn't offended. In fact, he wanted Lucci to become a challenge for him in the future, someone he could fight. After all, the sea is more satisfying with obstacles as Luffy sails. Then, Luffy just watched as all the others decided to follow Lucci. "Well, let's go. We have to head to my current headquarters," he said, while Bueno and Jabra followed him. It didn't take long for the three to start flying out of the island. Meanwhile, Lucci just looked out the distance through the warehouse window. "I swear I'll defeat you one day, Straw Hat," he murmured. And if Luffy heard that, he would be satisfied with the determination. Chapter 360, Meeting. Luffy arrived in Skypiea a while after his crew was still in the City of Angels, while Ganfall was talking with Yamato and Nojiko about the events of the Blue Sea and Luffy's plans. "Let me go," Luffy heard Bellamy murmur beneath him, as the man had already regained consciousness. But Luffy didn't seem to care about the man and turned his attention back to his crewmates as he approached, accompanied by Bueno and Jabra following him through the air. Luffy eventually landed near Ganfall and his companions, with the old man greeting him. "How are things?" Luffy asked. "Things were quiet regarding the training, we just had the issue with the prison break, no one could stop them," Ganfall said. "I can understand, after all, we're talking about one of Big Mom's 3 most powerful commanders," Luffy said and sighed. "I want a complete report on all this, I'll check the damages more in my cabin. For now, I'm going to see our former members. Luffy said, looking at the gigantic lagoon in the middle of the city, each thing he said sounding like a sonic turbine echoing throughout the place. Can't this guy go to the Cloud Sea? Luffy couldn't help but ask, yet he headed to the location with the new members. Hugo. Luffy called his companion as soon as he went to the square while the big man looked at his captain. I want you to put these new members into training as well. But this one is kind of rebellious, you know? Luffy said as he tossed Bellamy toward Hugo, unable to do anything but grit his teeth. Let me go. Bellamy exclaimed, but he couldn't free himself from Hugo's grasp even as he transformed his arms into spring legs and tried to pull away with them pressed against Hugo's body, who just looked at him as if the blonde was an idiot. Easy there, Blondie. I'm sure you're going to have a lot of fun here, understand? Hugo spoke with a small smile. That's great, I'm thinking of making him the supervisor of the new recruits. I want you to train them as I did with our crew one day. Luffy said, still remembering how merciless he was with the members from the start. He didn't even care about his wives begging him to be gentler. Meanwhile, beside them, Bueno and Jabber looked at each other frowning. Let's go. Hugo said, carrying Bellamy, and the two, having no choice, followed him as Hugo began explaining things. Luffy approached the square with the crowd gathered around his members chatting with each other, when someone jumped over the people, while Luffy saw Yuta approaching him at immense speed. Luffy accepted the girl's strong hug as she squeezed him with tears in her eyes, swinging her twin tails in front of him. How are you, my love? He said, kissing the girl's lips affectionately. I'm fine, but I saw what happened in the war. I saw you being pierced. I was so scared when I saw that. Yuta said as she hugged him with all her strength. Luffy gently patted her back. Sorry you had to see that. He also made a small caress on her head. Don't worry. I'm here now and well, soon we'll be so strong that we won't ever need to be hurt like that again. It won't happen to me again, and I won't let anyone be hurt like that. Luffy said as the girl nodded in agreement. I believe in you. She said with a tone that understood Luffy's words. Now let's see the others. He put her down as he proceeded to the center of the place with the crowd of Skypians quickly clearing a path for him. Luffy looked at the massive mass beside them. Laboon. Luffy greeted his friend, as a huge eye stared down at him. The sonic explosion of Laboon opening its mouth to talk like any whale made most cover their ears as Luffy broke into a smile. As he arrived, he saw almost all his members gathered chatting. While Yamato and Nojiko were still talking with Ganfall, Shirahoshi next to Megalo in their gigantic sizes, Usopp, Chopper chatting with Brook and Frankie. Lamy and Reiju in another one of their typical arguments. Alvida, Vivi with Crew, Kuina, Robin, and Baby 5 were talking. Chaochu and Ecchi were joining the others at that moment to play. Luffy had already been noticed, but some members came to greet him. Captain. Brook exclaimed as he went up to Luffy and Yuta. It's so good to see you again. Yo-oh. You protected everyone in the war. He said, laughing with his iconic laugh. Hello Brook. Luffy commented. Captain, you were super strong in the war. Frankie exclaimed as he approached, crossing his two arms in his iconic stance. Yes. It's good to see you too, Frankie, and I see you've started testing the projectiles I gave you. Luffy noticed some modifications on Frankie's body. Shark. 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 Megalo exclaimed next to Shirahoshi after her friend had been telling her about her adventure on Fishman Island. How's Megalo? Luffy said to the 20-meter shark. There was also a giant monkey staring at Luffy a few meters from Shirahoshi and giant Megalo. Greg. You've returned to your normal size. It's a pity since I won't be able to put you on my shoulder. Luffy said. Even so, I want you powerful until the end of our training. Luffy spoke while the red gorilla nodded. Luffy went over to the remaining crew members. Where are my sister, Bonnie, Perona, Nami, Vippo, Domino, and Rebecca? Luffy asked curiously with none of them there. Your sister went into a restaurant in town along with Bonnie. Rebecca seems very embarrassed. And Perona is the same way, hiding from us without seeming to mingle much. Zoro got lost as always, while Bippo went to Amazon Lily to fetch Black Pearl. Domino stayed in the ship's prison, and Rayleigh is talking to that woman named Gloriosa in Amazon Lily. Kuina said, while Luffy looked at the women's island floating among all the other islands around Skypiea. I see. But what about Nami? Luffy asked, somewhat satisfied with the island now there and about Domino finally accepting her job as a jailer, taking care of Caesar, Page 1, and Monet being the only prisoners on her ship at the moment. He also found Perona and Rebecca together with Kairos in a corner chatting, but afraid to socialize with the crew as others usually did. Luffy didn't blame them for that, he would have to talk to them later. As for his sister, she seemed to naturally get along well with Bonnie while eating and having fun around the city. About Nami. Kuina sighed, but someone interrupted her before she could continue. She's in the golden palace built for you. Nojiko approached with Yamato at this moment. Palace. Luffy murmured until he remembered seeing something shiny in the middle of the upper garden, but thought it was just part of Shandora that he hadn't moved. Luffy-sama. A Skypian approached. Luffy looked at him confused. We built a residence for you as the new god of Skypia, he said, pointing towards the forest where Shandora was located, and for the first time, Luffy saw a huge palace. How did you shape gold like that? Luffy was surprised. We learned to do many things during this time, Luffy-sama. So we built a palace for our god, he said, and Luffy was a bit confused. After all, he never said he would be the god of Skypia, while they could play Scanfall in this role and this place would just be his territory and an area used as his headquarters. That doesn't sound bad. I'll soon take a look to see how it turned out. Nami must be ecstatic there. It's better we see her before she goes crazy. Luffy murmured before looking at other members of his fleet in the city. He saw a group hidden looking at him while gossiping. What are they doing, huh? I don't know, Captain. They're very strange and just keep shouting, exclaiming from afar, but they're afraid to approach. Are you sure they're trustworthy? Alvida commented as Luffy wanted to laugh at Bartolomeo in that corner, his eyes looking like stars, but he was just an observer. It's okay, they're like that, but they're trustworthy. Luffy shrugged. Captain. Marry me. Lola appeared at this moment, while everyone fell silent to that question. No. Luffy shrugged. 4,852 rejections. All the members behind Lola shouted, even the Skypians in a chorus for Luffy, as he frowned at this bizarre scene. Captain. How are you after the war? If you need a good wife, I can give you a massage. Lola said, winking one eye at Luffy. Do you want to die? I'm the only one who can give a massage to the master. Baby 5 exclaimed while her hand turned into a weapon to attack Lola. Luffy sighed and noticed Foxy among the crowd. He was silent and looked much more serious than when Luffy had caught him. Now he was really getting strong and his fruit would be very well utilized. Yuta. Can you step back a bit? Luffy suddenly asked, while the girl, closer to Luffy than anyone else, nodded even though she didn't understand. Luffy then looked up to the sky. Hush band. A female voice came like a yellow bullet falling on him the next second. A huge explosion then occurred where Luffy was, with him appearing a moment later with the smoke cloud lowering him in the middle of a crater with a woman clinging to him. What the hell is this? Someone exclaimed in surprise, looking there cautiously, while the woman began to look at Luffy angrily and with concern as indicated by the tears on her face. You went to that damn war and almost died. Makino immediately exclaimed, grabbing her husband after falling with him with her full weight, but he just easily grabbed her and didn't even move from the spot while the ground was destroyed. Luffy sighed. After all the women were quite worried about him. He had to understand their concern. It's alright now. I went through it and got stronger too. None of this will happen again. We'll talk more later. For now, I'm going to organize things. If you're here, it means Galdino also received my call. He spoke and noticed someone approaching the next moment. I'm here, boss. Galdino landed next to him. Luffy had called only him and Makita to Skypia, seeing that things seemed controlled in their kingdoms. Bon Clay would train with Ivankov, picking him up in Alabasta, and the other members of the Baroque Orcs would still be working as sentinels in other kingdoms except for Mr. One and Crocodile, who are no longer from the Baroque Orcs and went to the New World as independent pirates. Crocodile will still belong to my crew, Luffy thought, and let go of Makita. Now let's see the palace made of gold. I want everyone with reports for me to read, before seeing what happened in the prison and the escape of Cracker with the main family members of Germa 66. Luffy declared before heading to the upper yard with his members. Some information about the Straw Hats below. Information: Harem, Hancock, Yamato, Shirahoshi, Lamy, Reiju, Nami, Nojiko, Alvida, Vivi, Robin, Yuta, Makita. Lovers, baby 5 children, non-main crew members, Luffy, Captain, Yamato, Vice Captain, Zoro, Kuina, Shirahoshi, Usopp, Chopper, Lamy, Reiju, Nami, Nojiko, Alvida, Vivi, Robin, Hucky, baby 5, Chaochu, Bippo, Enel, Hugo, Jinbai, Lucy, Domino, Perona, Rebecca, and Bonnie, Frank, Brooke, Yuta. Official animals, crew, Laboon, Greg, and Megalo. Main fleet members, Hancock, Foxy, Makita, Galdino, Lola, Bellamy, Bueno, Jabra, Viola, Spy, Kairos, Bartolomeo. Potential contractors, Page 1, Monet. Scientists, Shiki's scientist and Cesar Crown. Future projects, genetic enhancement of giant animals, dinosaurs from Little Garden, Germa 66 clones, creating Wapometal, Super Soldier Project, Shipbuilding, secret project, a project only between Luffy and Enel, which will be done on the moon, enhancing the 3 hockey types with all members, studying the secret conqueror's hockey technique of the lost century. Ships, 20 fleet members, 5,000 soldiers. Countries in his territory: Goa Kingdom, Syrup Kingdom, Kokoyasi Kingdom, Shimatsuki Village, Whiskey Peak, Drum Kingdom, Alabasta, Skypiea, Luminarchy, Water 7, Amazon Lily. Soldiers from all kingdoms, 100,000 future kingdom projects: Little Garden, Jaya, Dressrosa, Wano, Egghead, Sabiti. Allies: Rayleigh, Whitebeard Pirates, Red Hair Pirates. Available fruits: Fish Fruit Model, Azure Dragon Devil Fruit, Munch Fruit Model, Munch Human, Life Fruit Model, Ramu. Chapter 361, I am declaring war against you, Big Mom. Luffy approached the golden castle created for him with the current title of God of Skypiea. The place had a Japanese design. It's a Wano designer. How did they manage to do this with gold? Luffy couldn't help but ask, looking at the enormous structure. This is like Wano? Yamato asked curiously beside him. After all, he had never left Onigashima, so he had never been to Wano to really see what the country was like, besides reading Oden's diary. Let's go in. I'm sure Nami is somewhere. Luffy said, and he was right. Nami was lying in a corner, hugging the golden floor. Luffy just shook his head and continued walking to the room that would be the main one. I think this castle is cool. But I prefer the Black Pearl. Luffy couldn't help but comment, his ship was much more comfortable than this place. Then they proceeded to this spacious room, where more than 100 people could fit. The place continued to be entirely made of gold, something that Luffy didn't like because it was so bright. Well, let's get started. I want you to give me reports on everything that has happened, both here and in the countries of our kingdom. Everyone went into a state of preparation for a future order, but I want to see how their current states are. Luffy requested, and Goldino and Ute handed papers to Luffy as he sat in his prepared chair, starting to read the papers. The kingdoms we passed through are developing very well. Luffy commented, satisfied. Drum Kingdom had finally finished building its medical center where new doctors would be trained, and the kingdom was beginning to regain its former glory. Alabasta was also returning to stabilization after nearly erupting into a civil war. The rains had returned since Crocodile was defeated, starting the prosperity of the desert country while Luffy suggested some type of agriculture for the country. He followed a machine that bought the project in the system with authorship by Dr. Vegapunk but incomplete, which transforms seawater into potable water for consumption. Luffy worked a bit on this machine, trying to complete the project with his knowledge of the modern world. His father-in-law initiated a project to place underground pipes throughout Alabasta in a way that would connect the entire kingdom and not rely so much on rain. This would be executed as soon as they started supplying Wapole metal to the kingdoms. Luminarchy wasn't a very difficult kingdom to conquer after he robbed the auction house and stole from the king himself. He was interested in the giant crystal on the island but ended up leaving it in the kingdom since now, with Doflamingo dead, the king contacted him and practically gave the kingdom away. Luffy abolished any slave auctions in the kingdom, still allowing the activity of selling rare items. Water 7 was instructed to continue making ships, but Luffy asked for some shipbuilding teams to come to Skypiea to build new ships for the fleet. Whiskey Peak maintained a strong trade in alcoholic beverages, creating new types of alcohol that Luffy knew to transform the market. Despite the strong trade between the allied kingdoms within Luffy's territory, the beverages began to be requested by many other kingdoms, making it an extremely lucrative territory for Luffy. In East Blue, the Goa Kingdom was very active and prosperous while the world government had not interfered with the kingdom since Makino was exposed as Shanks's wife and with Luffy's threat to launch meteors at Mary Joy's. The kingdom used its strong trade while the trade continued strong and the Goa Kingdom greatly strengthened the rising kingdoms like Syrup and Kokoyasi, which grew a lot and ended up attracting many people from other blues seeking a better life and finding opportunities in these places. The Syrup Kingdom was becoming so strong in economic activity, a palace was built, and Kaya had transformed her boat-building company almost into a monopoly of shipbuilding in East Blue, providing many commercial ships for the other islands. The biggest growth actually came from Kokoyasi Kingdom, which quickly became the central point of commerce in the Blue Sea due to its location in the middle of the sea, connecting all the waters. The kingdom also began to have a strong agricultural economy due to the creation of immense farms. The capital was immense while the former mayor took care of things as a governor, while the real power of the kingdom was concentrated in the queens who never returned to the country due to being with Luffy. Shimatsuki village was also growing while a project to create swordsmen on that island had begun. With Zoro's fame coming from there and his performance in the war, many would be attracted to the place. Now, regarding a territory he was acquiring without knowing, it was Log Town itself. With Kaider, A man he had rescued with his wife from a ship being attacked by a Cipher Pol division in East Blue. He was a merchant who left his land for East Blue in search of treasure. The world government tracked them, and they were attacked. While the man tried to start over in Logtown, the experienced merchant and his wife soon began to gain power and influence in the city. He quickly started acquiring all the shops in the city and was running for mayor. He sent a letter through his contacts declaring his loyalty to Luffy's flag. "That's very good," Luffy murmured after seeing the reports about his territories. He looked at Makita and Goldino before seeing their reports on the activities of Baroque Works. "I want the organization to expand. We need more members to protect the kingdoms, collect information, and protect the merchant ships between our kingdoms. You will operate everywhere," Luffy said, sitting like a mafia boss. "Yes," Goldino said. "We also can't let information about our relationship get out, although it won't take long, since I have members from those countries in the crew. But let's avoid revealing our relationship as much as possible," Luffy said. Luffy went back to looking at information about the training and experiments, thinking about how he could improve them. "This is getting better than before. We will have stronger beasts than they were in Shicky's time. And with Caesar, I can improve the experiments even more," Luffy murmured, satisfied. Now he picked up another paper, and his expression darkened. "I want the Poe to be called here immediately," Luffy requested, with Usopp making a call to the Den Mushi in Amazon Lily where he should be bringing Black Pearl. So, Cracker withstood the pressure and managed to free the members of Germa 66. "And they killed more than 30 people," Luffy murmured in a bad mood. One thing he couldn't stand was his people dying, and he needed to respond. "I didn't expect to do this so soon, but I'll face that old woman anyway," Luffy decided and pulled out a special Den Mushi from his cloak. "What are you planning to do, Luffy?" Robin asked, seeing that Luffy was about to do something big, as the others looked at their captain, waiting to see what he planned. "I'm going to declare war on another 4 emperors," Luffy murmured and began dialing a number on the Den Mushi. Bippo arrived at that moment as Black Pearl landed in front of the Golden Palace. "Captain. You called for me." He appeared, approaching Luffy. "Great." Luffy nodded as the phone started dialing. Luffy took a black power from his desk and threw it at a confused Bippo. "Use this, you'll need it," Luffy said. As Bippo began to use it and transform his personality into a more confident one, Luffy opened a map while the others looked at him doubtfully. "What map is that?" Nami finally asked, stopping her admiration of the palace's gold. "It's a map made by the Marines of the New World," Luffy replied. "Here are the reports, the locations of the 4 emperors' territories islands," he said. After all, the Navy and the world government had to mark the territory somehow. Even if they didn't have a dynamic world map, they certainly had many mapped areas. "What do you need, Captain?" Bippo asked, looking at him seriously. "See this region full of nearby islands? I want you to do that there," Luffy commanded, and the Den Mushi finally picked up. "Hello, hello?" A voice came from the other side. "Is this Big Mom's number?" Luffy asked calmly. "Yes, who are you?" the person asked. "Good. Let me talk to that fat old woman." Luffy ignored the question from the other side and simply insulted the 4 emperors without fear, while everyone in front of him looked at him with wide, astonished eyes. The Den Mushi made a huge frown while remaining silent for a moment before suddenly exploding. Big Mom seemed to be right next to it, listening the whole time. Big Mom, who was eating a cake, heard someone insult her out of the blue and immediately exclaimed, "Who are you, you damn brat? Tell me now so I can destroy your entire family." She shouted angrily while the other children in the room looked stunned, wondering who would dare insult their mother like that. "I am Monkey D. Luffy. I doubt you can back up your words," Luffy replied calmly. "You!" Big Mom exclaimed, surprised by this. "How did you get my number?" she immediately demanded. "It doesn't matter, you fat old woman," Luffy said again, leaving everyone in the room shocked as Big Mom's face looked stunned before seeming to go mad. "Do you have any idea who you are talking to?" she exclaimed, appearing on the verge of losing control. "Let me tell you the reason for my call. Your son Cracker has made me quite furious this time. Killing some of my soldiers is something I will not forgive," Luffy began, while Big Mom looked a bit confused despite her imminent fury. Her children, mainly Kitakuri and Smoothie, who were nearby, frowned. They had received a call from Cracker as soon as the war ended. He and Germa 66 were almost back in their territory at that moment, saying he had managed to escape from the Straw Hat on an island in the sky. So, the siblings finally sighed in relief, seeing that despite the surprising strength of the Straw Hat, their brother would finally return alive. They didn't want to go to war against the crew, not now, but Luffy's call seemed to be taking a different turn. "What do you mean?" Big Mom immediately asked, angrily. You idiot woman, your son came to attack me a while ago. I beat him up and imprisoned him, but he escaped from my prison some time later and killed several soldiers who worked for me. Tell me, Big Mom, what would you do at this moment? Luffy asked with a tone of anger. What? He was imprisoned? Big Mom exclaimed, surprised by this information she hadn't known until then. Well, that doesn't matter now. The important thing is that this is my answer, Lin. I am declaring war against you, you damn fat old woman. Luffy wasted no time finishing, while Big Mom was perplexed by someone acting this way towards her, as no one ever did that. I will kill you, brat. Come to the new world. Big Mom exclaimed, starting to lose control of her anger. I will do that soon, but here is my answer. And you better look at the sky. Luffy said while Bippo was no longer in the room. Big Mom was confused, but it didn't take long for a soldier with a soul that the 4 emperors had stolen to come running into the room. Mama, Mama! He exclaimed. Meteors are coming here. The toy looked scared while Big Mom quickly got up and looked out the window with all her children. They all widened their eyes in astonishment as 6 meteors began to fall towards them and all the islands. Chapter 362, Preparations for Training. In the midst of the ancient main island of Shiki, with its headquarters in the middle of the forests, many men who were former subordinates of Shiki and now members of his fleet, carefully watched 4 people, one of them being Luffy himself, who was staring at the enormous creature in front of him. A gigantic elephant, lying on the ground with thick chains wrapped around it after it had lost consciousness to have its blood drawn. This animal was being studied after its genetics had been enhanced in the past few months a little before they left Skypiea to continue their adventures. One of the subordinates brought the collected blood of the animal while Chopper took it, carrying it to a piece of equipment and looking through a microscope. Luffy was waiting to see Chopper's report. By his side were Shiki's scientist and Caesar, who was quite well behaved beside him, as he could do nothing but obey Luffy, now that his heart had been removed by Lami after Luffy's request. It had been 3 days since the event between Luffy and Big Mom. He had hung up the Den Mushi after the announcement of Big Mom's soldiers with meteors falling, while Bippo had managed to aim at Big Mom's island with his wig of trust. Luffy did not know what had really happened and how Big Mom managed to defend herself from the attack or if she really did so, but the news of 6 meteors falling on her territory was published in the newspaper, with some people taking pictures of them in the New World. This indirectly ended up sending a message to the world government that they would have to worry not just about one meteor falling on Mary Jo's. The last few days were just a feast, celebrating the victory of the war and everything they had gone through and survived. Now Luffy really began to execute his real plans. The first thing he did was to release Monet from the ship's prison. The girl had no choice, after all, she couldn't just fly off the island if she tried to escape. Luffy set her free, provided she did not hurt anyone. Otherwise, she would lose her chance with him. He also gave her some documents to analyze and pass on some information to him, in addition to asking her to report on any summary report that came from other places in the territory. Meanwhile, members of Baroque Works began to bring more important documents, avoiding information arriving through a special Den Mushi, which could be traced no matter the technology it had. After all, even a call from the Goroseas can be traced. Returning to the present, Chopper finally managed to finish examining the blood. Its cells are stronger and more resilient. It increased about 15%. He spoke and Luffy nodded. It's a good short-term result, however, we need to improve even more. Luffy commented as 15% is very little for his training. The next moment, the elephant began to open its eyes while it roared quickly as they tried to free themselves in the next moment, while the chains strained and all the subordinates looked on in fear with some comments. Luffy watched like an animal and wondered how he could improve it. After all, it was weak. It needed a new dose of superpower. You really seem to have done a good job, Doctor. Luffy commented, admitting it was progress, as the chains were losing every moment. Thank you. We had some work in improving the formula. With the information Dr. Chopper passed us and worked together, it became much easier to execute and enhance the old dose, said the doctor, while Chopper remained silent, just observing without giving his opinion. Do you see this, Caesar? Called Luffy. I want you to help develop the genetics of these animals even further. He spoke but began to take on a more serious tone. You did a good job, but now with you 3 in this next year, I want the power of the animals to increase by 200% and I want them to develop hockey as well. He declared. You want these animals to develop hockey? That's crazy. Exclaimed Caesar, shocked, while the doctor and Chopper had a strange expression. You can't do that? Luffy raised an eyebrow at them. Caesar seemed challenged now, even though he was still a kidnapped scientist. Don't underestimate me. If you really want me to do this, it will be done. He said, all arrogant. After all, I am the smartest scientist in the world. He claimed as the doctor looked at him, considering Caesar an idiot. since what Luffy wanted was practically impossible. Well, that's good. Then I want to see results soon. Luffy agreed with Caesar, since he was so confident. He hoped he would do a good job in the coming months. The next moment, his attention returned to the front, as the chains restraining the elephant exploded. He immediately looked at the four and the other subordinates with red eyes, and in the next moment, he charged, ready to attack with his trunk. He is coming. The men screamed in fear. Does this animal think it's Zunshaw or something? Luffy commented calmly, as Chopper transformed into his muscular form. The doctor cautiously stepped back, and Caesar was preparing to launch his poisonous gas, but Luffy acted first. As the giant elephant prepared to hit them with its trunk, he advanced, while his fist transformed into Haki, hitting the elephant on the head. The next moment, the elephant was knocked back, breaking the ground and trees, making a small path through the island of 50 meters before stopping defeated in the forest. The Haki of Ryao can easily take him down. Luffy murmured dissatisfied. I need him to be stronger than this, he declared. I want you to develop them so they can learn and develop the use of Haki. They will be essential for training this next year and also be a great force for the Straw Hat, Luffy declared. Yes, we'll work on that. The scientist responded. Great, I want you to start now. The dinosaurs that I brought from Little Gale are still in the upper garden. I want you to modify them too, so they are stronger than these common animals, if we could put the same form of growth and strength in them, Luffy said, setting a goal. After that, he decided to leave them on that island full of animals and ended up going to another, where he began to hear a female scream of pain. He approached the place and found his sister fallen on the ground, with several calluses on her forehead, screaming in pain. Ow, ow, ow. She complained with a blindfold on her eyes, while Rayleigh was beside her, holding a stick. Lucy has everything to develop as strong or even stronger than the original Luffy after the time skip. Luffy wanted to develop even her transformation of Nico before returning to the sea, where she would be much better prepared to face new challenges. I see the first day is already quite demanding, Luffy murmured, staring at them. She removed the blindfolds and looked at her brother. It hurts, Uncle Rayleigh. This old sand can hurt so easily, Luffy. Lucy complained, but Luffy shrugged. Don't you want to get strong? This will be the best teacher you'll ever have, so learn everything you can, he said. Lucy had a condition of the system that gave her a 100% advantage in her learning, even without the more fruit model, amplify human devil fruit at the moment, she would still grow and stand out a lot. And aren't you going to train too? Rayleigh asked, looking interestedly at Luffy. I still need to develop the Haki of Ryao better and reach the peak of basic armament Haki, and even control my manifestation of the future vision. I can see a second ahead, but I want to reach a longer time this year, Luffy replied. After all, Shanks had a quick observation that could predict beyond a second, and he wanted to reach that level, which would ensure even more power on the battlefield. Even want to reach the apex of the coding of the Haki of the King. Luffy finished. But you won't start now, will you? Rayleigh commented. No, I'll wait a few more days. I want to go to the East Blue still, Luffy declared. East Blue? And what are you going to do there? Going to Fuusha village? Lucy immediately asked excitedly. Yes, our grandfather is on the island at this moment, Luffy said. Then take me with you, Lucy immediately requested. But Luffy denied. No, you need to train first. If you get strong this year, I promise I'll take you to see everyone before we head to the New World. He spoke, and Lucy, despite pouting, nodded in the end. Of course. Luffy turned back to Rayleigh. I'd like you to take a look at the others too, if you can. I know your commitment is directly with Lucy, but if the crew needs help, there's no faster expert than you here, he said. After all, he had asked the man to train his sister exclusively and would not be offended if he refused. But he just nodded. All right, I'll check on the crew later, especially those who are learning to use Haki, he said. That makes sense, Luffy responded, satisfied. Now I'm off. I have a few more things to sort out, Luffy said and left the island, moving downward. He headed to the upper garden, where he saw Perona, Bonnie, Rebecca, Kairos, Lola, Monet, Foxy, Bueno, and the others training together with Kuina. As the girl began to teach them about the 6 styles, those who already knew were developing to an even higher level, reaching the level of the 6 styles of the Holy Knights. Luffy appeared at this moment, and almost everyone stopped training for a second to look at him. Anything, Captain? Kuina asked. Yes, I want Lola and Rebecca with me at this moment, he requested. The 2 girls followed him, while the others continued training. Even Kairos was reluctant to let his daughter alone with that man. They went to a corner where there was a waterfall, while the others waited for Luffy to speak. Lola quickly exclaimed as soon as Luffy stopped near a waterfall. "Captain, are you calling me here for a marriage proposal?" she exclaimed. Luffy looked tired of these requests from the woman, while Rebecca blushed, but he just sighed and shook his head negatively. "No, I'm here to talk about your fruits," he replied, as he took out 2 fruits from 2 boxes. "This one is for you, Rebecca. And this is for you, Lola. In one box is the Munch Munch fruit model, Munch Human, a special fruit that I want you to use to create a special medal for the entire army and kingdoms," he declared, while Lola looked at the fruit before nodding. "I'll do this for you, my future husband," she said excitedly. Luffy ignored her and looked at Rebecca, analyzing her fruit. "This is the prototype of Kaido's no Mi. As I said earlier, it does not possess the same power or level as the original. However, it still gives you abilities like flying, creating flaming clouds, and a good fire charge. However, it is still flawed in the resilience that the original provides. But that you can work on over time. Your father is a great warrior, I'm sure you can reach a great level with hockey within this year." Luffy spoke, and Rebecca nodded in the end, looking determined to save Dressrosa. "Now, you can eat," he instructed, and both girls bit into the fruits, making faces, but still swallowing everything before Luffy could say they didn't need to eat the whole fruit. "They want power," Luffy thought, satisfied with that, and cracked a smile. "Great. Now you can go back to training. Remember, there will be no rest this year. So, become strong before we sail the seas again," he declared, and the girls nodded, returning to their training. Luffy then left Skypiea, while the rest of his crew was training at various locations, further improving their skills. In the air, he could see Nami trying to control the wind transformed into Garuda at the edge of the island, while Reiju and Lamy were fighting each other, which was not new. Luffy ignored all this and headed to Amazon Lily, where the women also began their special training after Luffy gave them some training manuals. He wanted them to learn at least the 6 styles. He landed at the Empress's castle and it didn't take long for Hancock to appear. "Luffy!" she exclaimed, raising her hands and running toward him. "Hancock, what did I tell you about not getting out of bed? In less than 7 months, we'll have these children, and I want them to be born healthy," Luffy said, now that she had begun to show the first signs of the 2nd month of pregnancy, with a slight bulge in her belly. Luffy also noticed something among his girls, as they looked at Hancock's belly with a gleam of desire in their eyes. It was no lie that Luffy wanted to have a bunch of kids, and he already had many women for that, but he didn't want to have many children now with all the chaos happening. Despite this, it was also good for him to already have heirs, since he was not exempt from death, and leaving someone in the world to continue his legacy was important to him or any conqueror. Luffy decided to let things go naturally. If any woman turned up pregnant, he would take care of his child like any father. Anyway, he just picked up Hancock and went to bed, pampering her, as he often did. The girl also forced him to do this, taking up most of Luffy's free time. Chapter 363, Grandfather. The training continued among the members on Skype, and as Luffy monitored all the trainings, he read reports here and there with Vivi and Monet appearing in his cabin delivering papers from the kingdoms to him and making calls all the time. The green-haired woman finally seemed to accept her fate while continuing to obey everything Luffy asked and did everything with excellence. The genetic enhancement projects continued with the scientists, while Frank began working on Dr. Vegapunk's projects that he managed to obtain. Luffy wished Enel were here to help him, but the man was already busy on the moon with a project he had secretly given him when they said goodbye and asked him to try creating by placing some things in his boat. This project was the one Luffy had read a while ago in Water 7, before it was burned, but there were still important things he noted with his photographic memory. He continued writing more about his projects while clearing up doubts from the kings and those responsible for the current countries and kingdoms of his territory, wanting to understand their orders regarding the future Order 66. He continued with this for a while and it took about a week until he finally sighed, seeing that he had organized everything and received the information that his grandfather would be in Goa and would stay there for a month because it was normal after everything that happened. Luffy did a little stretch and stood up saying he wanted to organize a few more things on the island before departing. "Can I see you, my father?" Luffy suddenly heard Vivi asking and nodded. "Just be careful when traveling there. Use this and just press the button at the end if there's any danger. Understand?" Luffy said, handing a special alert Dendenmushi to Vivi, while the girl nodded. Luffy continued getting everything organized while the new members of the fleet and crew trained hard and the others struggled to develop their haki. It was after a few days that he gathered everyone at a banquet to make the announcement. "I will be departing along with the others tomorrow and will be away for a few weeks," Luffy said. Vivi wasn't the only one who would leave with Luffy. After all, Chopper would go to Drum Kingdom. Nami and Nojiko to Kokoyashi Kingdom, Reiju to Barati, and Usopp to Syrup Kingdom. When the captain returns, we'll show him that we are stronger, right, Brogy? A giant spoke to his friend. Yes, Dory, we will be stronger. Another giant said with a confident tone. Luffy nodded, and after that, they continued the banquet, and the next day everyone who was leaving departed while Vivi and Chopper headed for the start of the Grand Line. Most passed over the Calm Belt. Entering the East Blue, they split up going to each of their kingdoms while Luffy was the last still in the air, heading for the island at the tip of the East Blue, Boa Kingdom, while viewing from the air, the huge city at one end and the small Fuusha village at another corner of the island. Luffy looked at the island while remembering the mountains and forests where he, Ace, Sabo, and Lucy played when they were children. But his destination was toward the small port village while a man in a bar suddenly raised an eyebrow. The bar was full of security while the Queen of the Gaul Kingdom was working there again, but this time no one could complain as she served the marine hero, Garp, spending some time here. Garp, you damn. You almost let Ace die. Didn't immediately complained, accusing him angrily. Calm down, isn't Ace alive? Whoop Slap said beside. Here. This will improve your mood. Makino said as she approached, placing a glass in front of Garp, who drank in silence as if he were waiting for something. Aren't you going to answer me? Didn't exclaimed to Garp, but he kept ignoring her. Calm down, Didn't. A new voice emerged as the doors of the bar opened while a man with a straw hat entered at that moment. Luffy? Didn't, Slap, and Makino exclaimed at the same time with Luffy there. Garp remained silent without turning around, already noticing his grandson approaching from many kilometers away. Makino seemed so excited that she left the counter side and ran to hug him. It's so good to see you, she commented, flashing him a wide smile as he nodded. It's good to see you too, Makino. I see you've become a powerful queen and are taking great care of the kingdom, he said, and she responded with an excited smile. Yakata. Didin was another who jumped to hug Luffy, crying like a little girl. I thought you were going to die, you idiot. Yakata. She continued while Slap approached, and all the other guards and ministers there did not approach that terrible pirate who ruled the kingdom and killed its last king. You brought more shame to the village, to the Goa Kingdom. Slap commented with dissatisfaction, but he cracked a small smile afterward. Luffy left the three aside and looked at the counter with Garp still keeping his drink in front of him. So you're here then, brat. Garp commented, and Luffy looked at him with a more serious gaze. Grandpa. Why don't we go camping on the mountain today like old times? Luffy suggested. Garp remained silent for a while longer before getting up and walking past Luffy. Let's go, he murmured, and Luffy followed him, leaving Makino and the rest of the High Council members behind. Before I leave, I will return, Luffy said as he continued following his grandfather. They headed to the mountain and entered the forest. You prepare the fire, I'll go hunt something, Garp said indifferently, and Luffy just nodded. He knew his grandfather was not in a good mood and ended up collecting wood despite it being a task unfit for a man of his status. Yet he did it and felt pleasure in it, as if it reminded him of old times. His grandfather returned a while later with a giant dead pig. While he took the initiative to cut it, Luffy prepared a large fire, pulling out some spices from the system. Everything was done in silence as Luffy prepared the food, placing these items, and finally they sat down to eat as the day disappeared and everything became dark in the middle of the kingdom's forest. You know, Luffy. Garp finally broke the silence, making Luffy look at him curiously. I always wondered why you and Ace never chose the path of the Navy, and now Lucy ended up following you guys too. But maybe it's the best path suited for you, even though I think justice is always the best path. Garp commented with a sad tone, and Luffy felt sorry for his grandfather. You know very well that there are things we couldn't do in the Navy, Grandpa. I don't consider myself a psychopath, but despite people seeing me that way, I still own my path. The Navy limits you to obeying any order from those bastards of Mary Joyce. Luffy commented sincerely. The Navy can resort to the philosophy of justice when the world government isn't threatened, but when they are, they will commit atrocities. You know very well what happened to one of my crew members, Robin, and how her island was tragically destroyed. And even one of the current admirals, Q's, who participated in that attack, had to obey orders and committed atrocity, even if his view of justice is solid. Luffy sighed before speaking more seriously to his very serious grandfather, listening. As long as the Navy is affiliated with the world government, your path of justice won't always be correct, he said while Garp continued in silence. You know why that Gorosei wanted to kill Lucy when he announced? Among so many people he could have, she was chosen. He chose Beppo because he has the power to destroy Mary Joyce, or at least cause them a great headache. They chose Robin because she possesses the knowledge of the lost century. They chose to kill me because of everything I represent and all the information I have from this world. Luffy continued, looking into the fire. They chose Lucy in the end, and you know why? he asked, looking at his grandfather. Garp had always had this doubt since the announcement of Saturn. I don't know, he admitted. Luffy was surprised that he didn't know about the Nika fruit. It's because of her fruit. Luffy spoke as Garp looked on with a raised eyebrow. He believed that Lucy had a common fruit, although he still believed that Lucy would be the strongest sailor and that she would do great things. The government hides that fruit because it carries the name of a god. The real name of the fruit is human fruit model, sun god Nika devil fruit, mythical type, he said, leaving Garp surprised by this, looking puzzled, before continuing. Its model is Nika, the god of the sun, Luffy declared. What? Garp exclaimed, making a funny face at this moment. You must be joking. He didn't believe Luffy. There's hardly any record of Nika, but he could change the world around him, turning everything into rubber and even shaping reality. It's the most absurd power in this world. Luffy believed that this power was even ahead of the power of the earthquake fruit model, Tremor human devil fruit. Are you sure about this, brat? Garp couldn't help but ask, surprised. I'm not lying to you. Lucy would meet her end in the Navy as soon as she showed this awakening of the fruit. The world government fears her power because in the lost century, the government's greatest enemy was called Joy Boy. He had the same power as Lucy, with her awakened fruit. And if she demonstrated it, they would do anything and even kill him to kill Lucy. Luffy spoke. Garp looked on for a while and fell silent, thinking about what his grandson had said. What are you planning to achieve with this, Luffy? What are your real goals for the seas? He asked, curious. Luffy cracked a small smile. I'm not sure, but this world is in danger. I don't know the details, but something big is going to happen and it has to do with Roger's prophecy. That's why he threw the world into chaos by creating this era, so the right person could find his treasure. I want to create a world where there is no central government, a world where countries have their own sovereignty, but still, it would be the one who conquers all the seas. I've always had my will to face a great adventure, face powerful enemies, have my own family and raise my children, and be strong enough to do all this. Luffy spoke. He had always had these ambitions, despite his memories having come just over 6 months ago. He had always thought about this since he became aware of this world and was just following his ambitions normally. I see. Garp murmured. After that, they remained silent, sleeping there on the ground, leaning against the wall. Luffy, in the end, put out the fire and saw his grandfather dozing off. He pulled a blanket from the system and covered him carefully, before lying down near another tree. Garp and Luffy were sleeping like in the old days while Garp, too, couldn't help but crack a small smile while he also slept. Chapter 364, Epilogue of the Second Volume. In the East Blue, an island shook as two figures dashed toward each other, clashing and releasing a wave of hockey all around as each tried to best the other in this confrontation. The island rocked until one of them lost, being thrown backward as his body dragged dirt and trees before colliding with a mountain in the middle of the place. Luffy sighed as his body was buried among all that trouble. I'm not at Grandpa's level yet. Luffy murmured internally as he felt himself struck by future sight the next second. Luffy. Don't go soft, you brat. Garp appeared at that moment, digging through the earth behind Luffy and emerging in front of him. Luffy immediately tried to retaliate, but in the next moment, he was struck again, his body digging even deeper into the ground, while from the outside view, the entire mountain began to crumble. Luffy fell into a huge underground cavern. As he got back on his feet, his fists immediately layered more hockey before he dodged Garp's next move entering the underground cavern trying to hit him. He moved in a counter a moment later as Garp, without time to react to this move from Luffy, crossed his arms in defense and was sent backward with his grandson's punch, breaking several walls as he continued advancing through the underground caverns. Luffy did not stay still and this time advanced against his grandfather as the latter was already prepared for him in the next moment, and both began to fight amid those natural underground constructions beneath the island. The whole place trembled as more and more shocks between grandfather and grandson's hakis hit each other, and they kept descending further as a lake of lava appeared in the middle of the fight due to their deep descent, each trying to outdo the other. Even though Luffy was slightly less effective than his grandfather, he did not back down as he continued to strike against him. The explosions continued the entire time as Luffy and Garp kept going through the lava below sea level, the entire island trembling as animals began to flee, and once again, one side of the earth burst open on the surface as Luffy and Garp emerged fighting each other. Hours continued while they again returned to the island's underground, causing it to shake more than ever, and neither of them noticed as not just hours passed, but days continued with both solely focused on the fight. Ships passed nearby, but no one dared approach with the explosions being heard from a distance, even the sea becoming choppy with it, deterring any curious onlookers from taking a risk. Luffy and Garp spent 7 days fighting each other until they finally decided to stop after exhaustion. Luffy stood in front of the fire, his arm broken and his face covered in marks with bruised eyes. Garp stood close to him while maintaining his face with one of the eyes bruised as well. He did not come out unscathed, although he managed to fare better than Luffy. You really have become strong, kid. But you still have a lot to learn. Boo-ah-ha-ha-ha-ha-ha. Garp began to laugh. Luffy just stayed silent, not disagreeing with his grandfather. It's true. He then spoke as soon as his grandfather stopped laughing. But that doesn't mean I won't surpass you in the future. So wait for me, Grandpa. I'm going to beat you. He broke into a smile. I'll be waiting for that. Garp also smiled as they spent another night on that uninhabited island, apart from the animals, to recover their energies from the start of the fight over the last 7 days, and they went to sleep. I did this for you. Garp approached Luffy the next morning with a sheet. This? Luffy murmured, surprised as he took the sheet with observations from his grandfather about his strengths and weaknesses, where he needed to develop, and where he needed to train even more to overcome his combat deficiencies. I know the King of Darkness is teaching Lucy, as you told me, but I'd like you to have my approval. After all, you are still my grandson. Garp said, returning to a melancholic tone. Thank you. I guess. Luffy murmured awkwardly. I'm trying to make sure you don't die. You have powerful eyes on you now. So protect Lucy and my future granddaughters. He immediately demanded. I'm heading to Logtown then. Thanks, Grandpa. Luffy murmured in the end before hugging Garp in the middle of the almost entirely destroyed island. Take care, Luffy. Garp commented. Will you stay and go? Luffy asked. Yes, I have 1 more week off before I go back to the Navy. You're lucky I'm on vacation, otherwise you'd be heading to Impel Down. Garp said with a cocky smile. You talk as if you could really catch me. Luffy mocked. You. Garp ended up not finishing his sentence. With things now calmer, the animals began to emerge from their hiding spots. Trying to see if those two were gone, a monkey and a lioness approached the beach and were surprised to find both the two monsters that had been destroying the island until a few hours ago, standing in front of each other while sleeping upright. Both animals looked at each other, lost, as they started to leave so as not to wake them, returning to their hiding spot hoping the two would leave the island. Luffy and Garp continued to nap, possibly due to exhaustion from fighting for 7 consecutive days. The sun raced across the entire sky as it disappeared in the east, and with the moon, the same thing happened. It was only the next day that one of them finally woke up. A snore bubble escaped from Garp's nose as he woke up. He looked a bit lost, wondering where he was until he saw Luffy in front of him sleeping with traces of bruises from their fight while the bubble in his nose grew and shrunk with each breath. Garp got extremely angry with his grandson, sleeping in front of him without knowing how long he had been there. Luffy, you damn fool. You shouldn't sleep in front of others. He immediately yelled before turning his fist into hockey and striking his grandson, causing a huge explosion in the middle of the beach. In the end, Luffy began to say goodbye to his grandfather as soon as he had recovered from that rage attack from Garp. Goodbye, Grandpa. Luffy spoke before jumping into the air while Garp would go in a different direction, returning to Goa and his grandson, to Logtown. It had been 2 weeks since he and the others had left Skypiea. Luffy took advantage of this time with the people from the Boa Kingdom, but hidden from the rest of the world. He trained with his grandfather to perfect his king's hockey coating and further improve his other hockey. Perhaps this was the only training he would have in his grandfather's life, so he took advantage of it to have a very serious fight that lasted the last 7 days, and now, with everything ready, he followed to see someone he hadn't seen for a long time, who had settled in Logtown after they said goodbye at Barity. Landing discreetly in Logtown, he went to a large mansion. They really got a lot. Luffy commented before going to the door while the mansion guards who patrolled the place didn't see him and he knocked. A woman opened the door wearing a maid's outfit. Who are you? The woman looked at Luffy suspiciously as he still had his 2 bruised eyes and a bump on his head from his grandfather's last punch. I'm here to see Coyote. He spoke, opening a small smile to the woman. Mr. Coyote? She murmured, a bit lost, thinking he was some kind of beggar. Who was there? A stern voice came from the middle of the place as a middle-aged man in a suit approached. He finally saw Luffy in front of his maid. Monkey D. Luffy. It's a pleasure to see you again. Let him in immediately. The man exclaimed with an excited smile. Hello, Coyote. How are you? Luffy asked, entering the place. Monkey D. Luffy. The Monkey D. Luffy? The maid murmured until she opened her eyes and fainted the next moment, but Luffy greeted his old acquaintance, ignoring the fallen woman. Came to my office. Coyote said, and Luffy followed him. You finally mastonjit visit Ilva. Skorki desoisi ra. Skori el spisalenter, outdori mastonjit undignilva. Marta approached them as she spoke. Hello, Marta. Luffy greeted, though he still didn't understand anything she was saying. Luffy entered the man's office as they began to talk among themselves, recounting his story of starting again from scratch as a small merchant and becoming the main candidate for mayor of the city in less than a year here. Luffy was surprised to learn that the man had pledged loyalty to him. His wife spoke as well, but Luffy still didn't understand anything she was saying. If you want that. Luffy came to a conclusion. Then I want you to start these projects. Logetown will enter the alliance among my territories, where trade has increased a lot and we are militarizing all the country so they can have their own forces and be summoned in the future. He spoke as he handed over his projects. Kyrte took them and read before nodding. That will certainly be an honor, we will expand the business even further. He said. Kesipagagan Bonadam governments say future. Night Pustagon Daur Umbagan. Marta also said. Luffy just looked at her not understanding and turned back to the man nodding. Yes, then I'm counting on you. He said. He stayed a few days at the location while talking with the couple, before starting to leave at this moment. He had called all his companions, informing them that it was time for them to return. It took a few more days for Nami, Nojiko, Kuina, and Usopp to return. The two sisters were quite surprised after seeing their old village transformed into a large kingdom, being hailed as queens. Usopp also came, as surprised as the other two, for he discovered that he became king of Syrup and married Kaya in these last two. Kuina stayed with her father enjoying more time than the last time they met, having a final father-daughter moment. With all the companions back, they began to return to Skypiea, meeting the rest of the members at the start of the Grand Line and heading to the place in the sky, where they would finally start their year of training. Meanwhile, in the New World on a deserted island, a group was gathering, with the man who was the leader looking at them with seriousness. We may have lost our chance at Manafort, but we can still continue our plan. So we will start our conquest of the New World and take down Whitebeard. Teach exclaimed to his companions as his body transformed into darkness with his power manifesting. Elsewhere. That brat. He really gave me a strong punch. But I will make him pay for what he did in the war and I will bring my daughter back, taking her from that damn man. Kaido exclaimed furiously about Luffy. In another territory. That damn man. I will kill him, I swear. Big Mom exclaimed amidst the destruction. She had gone mad after the attack of the meteors and stayed that way for 2 weeks until her children managed to calm her down. Cracker had already returned with the Germa 66, but he had a vacant look with the realization of what the Straw Hats had done to them, capable of launching an attack of that magnitude in the middle of the territory, and his brothers were not happy with him. After all, he had provoked something like this. Shanks elsewhere just sighed looking at the sky, and in the middle of the sea in the last territory of the Four Emperors, a small boat navigated to another giant ship. The blonde in the small boat smiled as he approached Moby Dick after seeing that the Whitebeard pirates did not attack him, waiting to see who it was. Finally, we are going to meet again. Ace. Sabo commented eagerly for their reunion. Already miles away, at a high altitude, 4 elderly men suddenly felt something at that moment. This Imsama has awakened. The 4 elders exclaimed as they went to see the being who ruled the world. End of this volume, post-credits scene. The destruction was everywhere. Thousands of bodies lying on the ground. In this scene of chaos and cruelty, another crowd was gathered. There were more than 10,000 people looking at a ship stopped with a man wearing his straw hat on his head. We finally managed to get where we wanted. Luffy said to everyone effortlessly, looking at all his fleet companions who fought by his side in this war. They finally managed to establish their position in the New World, and he wanted to redeclare to the world his crew after reading a specific poneglyph on their journey so far. From now on, we will no longer be known as the Straw Hat Pirates. Luffy said, as he took his hat and placed it on Lucy's head, who had been by his side the entire time. Luffy. Your hat? She asked, bewildered. Luffy just smiled at Lucy. It's yours now. He declared, finally passing on the hat of Joy Girl, something that should have been hers a long time ago, but Luffy knew that Shanks had passed it to him to pass it to her when the time came. He turned to the crowd, ignoring his still dazed sister and continued speaking as his red Rocky manifested for tens of kilometers, reaching even the world government ships in the middle of the sea just watching the battle from afar. From now on, we will be known as the Dawn Pirates crew, the D's. He said as his voice reached everyone within the range of his haki. Chapter 365, Time Skip 1 year. The seas had been quite rough since the war at Mare Eniford, even though months had passed since then, and thus a year had gone by. Since then, many things had happened. While some groups remained inactive, others had been the central point of discussions in recent months. In a small, simple fishing village located on a remote island, a boy ran through the bustling streets that morning, swiftly dodging inhabitants in front of him as he headed towards a specific place, one of the city exits. Hey, what do you think you're doing? You almost knocked down my stuff. The inhabitants, shopping at the city's market, immediately complained to the boy, bumping into them as he continued running through the island. He finally left the city and approached a house not too far away, perched on a cliff with a rocky shore below, while the sea waves crashed against those rocks. Outside this house, there was a middle-aged man, calmly looking out to sea. The man was missing one of his arms and remained silent, just enjoying the pleasure of the sea breeze that morning. "Uncle Rotiv? Uncle Rotiv?" A child's voice emerged in his ears as the boy who had left the town approached excitedly, interrupting the man's leisurely moment. Rotiv turned to the side and saw the boy approaching with a huge smile, holding pieces of newspaper in his hand. "Little Kim, what are you doing here? And what's that newspaper? Any interesting news?" Rotiv looked at the boy as he stopped in front of him, trying to catch his breath after running so much. "I haven't bought today's newspaper yet." He spoke calmly. The boy, now smiling, stepped closer to Mr. Rotiv, extending the newspaper. Rotiv seemed a bit surprised to see the front page with a pirate group spotted at sea. He couldn't hold back and began to laugh. "Ha ha 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 ha." The boy, curious, gave him a strange look, not thinking this was his uncle's expected reaction. "What's so funny? Aren't they the ones?" Rotiv, with a calm tone and a knowing look, just cracked a small smile after laughing a bit more. "No, they aren't." "You mean they're fakes?" The boy seemed very surprised by this. "Yes, just a bunch of idiots pretending to be them. Soon, they will meet a swift end. They don't know who they're messing with. The world government will send forces beyond what any novice pirate can handle. They will destroy them soon." He sighed, looking at the photo. "It's obvious they want fame and privileges, but at the same time, they're courting great danger." "Really? Could they have just gained some weight?" the boy commented, confused. "Of course not. Look at them." The man raised his voice, frowning with a grimace, while the boy tilted his head, still confused. "Maybe they are their brothers?" the boy asked. "Do you believe that?" said the man with a sharp-toothed grin to his foolish nephew, his sister's son. He sighed before turning back to the boy. "They are just imposters," he said. "But it's been so long. Shouldn't they have returned to the sea?" the boy said disappointedly. "Yes. But who knows? No one knows." Rotiv spoke calmly. "But you saw them. You were at Manaford, you must have seen them fighting. You must know something." the boy insisted. The man looked out to sea, slightly disappointed. "Why are you so interested in a dangerous pirate? It's been a year since anyone has heard anything about him. He just disappeared. I heard he weakened after Manaford. Maybe he's recovering to come back stronger. And just thinking that monster could get even stronger. It's terrifying for the entire world," Rotiv said with a quite somber tone. He was a sailor who had retired after the war that took place in Manaford. He had witnessed the horrors, suffered severe injuries while fighting the pirates, and even lost his arm, but he survived all that chaos and massacre, while many of his comrades were not so lucky. In the end, he was awarded a Medal of Honor and a retirement, living on this island that he had left many years ago to follow his dream of being a sailor. Since then, he would sit in the courtyard of his house, looking out to the sea below the cliff, reflecting on his life and how it all ended like this, no longer able to fight against pirates. This place was frequented by his nephew, the son of his sister, who always came to talk about the event that occurred in Manaford. This island was small, so there was no live broadcast by the Navy. The boy would constantly ask him many questions, with newspapers coming in about the war, wanting him to narrate the battles, and especially asking questions about Monkey D. Luffy, which was a source of dissatisfaction for the retired sailor. His nephew was a big fan of that pirate monster. Ever since he saw that monster appear, he has nightmares every night as a kind of film began to run in his mind, seeing himself again on that battlefield while watching all his comrades dying by his side and in front of him, witnessing the battles of Monkey D. Luffy, a monster that turned out to be worse than Whitebeard himself. He was just a low-ranking soldier fighting against common pirates, while that monster passed by them without even looking at him. It was a humiliating situation, but he survived in the end, with some traumas. Nobody knows where Straw Hat is. Many claim that he is secretly training with his crew, and as I said before, others say that Monkey D. Luffy weakened at the end of Manafort and is recovering, while others say he fled and even died. There are even some who say he never existed and is just a legend, despite thousands of witnesses in that damned war. The man spoke in a somewhat somber tone. "Of course he exists." The boy spoke confidently. "I want to see him in the newspaper. I'm a big fan of his," he exclaimed. "You shouldn't be so excited to see a pirate," the man said with a tone of disappointment. "I don't care, I'm a fan of Monkey D. Luffy. He will be the man who becomes the king of the pirates," the boy asserted, sticking his tongue out at his retired Navy uncle. But before the former sailor could say something, the boy looked at him with a calmer gleam. Do you think we can see the Straw Hat Comet tonight? Asked the boy. Rotiv looked at him. Yes, Kim. Today is the day it will appear on this side of the world. He spoke. That's great, then I'll see it with you, Uncle Rotiv. The boy spoke excitedly. My sister won't be happy with you staying here. But it's okay. He spoke at the end. After all, the retired sailor did not dislike the presence of his nephew, who was one of the few things that did him good, despite the rebellious boy being a fan of those he swore to defeat at sea. The young man had become addicted to the story of Luffy, especially when the comet that the pirate created to fight against one of the great forces of the world government circled the world once a month, and everyone could see it one day in all parts of the world. They continued talking, while the boy asked for the 1000th time about Monkey D. Luffy and what happened in Maniford. In the end, everything darkened, and the night showed a starry and clear sky, while a huge purple light crossed the sky at this moment, being the very light comet that appeared after the rotation of the Earth. I hope to see him one day, Uncle, said the boy with eyes shining to the sky at this moment. He will appear one day, despite not liking that monster among monsters again from the sea. He is not something easily defeated and soon we will hear about him, but I still fear for the future of this world. The man murmured. As the nephew and uncle watched the spectacle in the sky, the child eventually fell asleep as the hours went by. Monkey D. Luffy. The boy murmured in a chair next to his uncle, with his eyes closed in sleep, seemingly dreaming at the moment. His uncle picked him up before taking him inside and placing him in bed. He sighed, looking once more at the sea through the window, before closing up the house and going to sleep as well, since it was quite late. He would have to take his nephew back to his sister's house in the town the next day, but his gaze kept returning to the comet reflecting on the sea as it streaked across the sky. What will happen in the future of this world? He thought, not having much hope that the future would be so appealing. The comet continued to shine in the sky, leaving a luminous trail. Many other people around the world also had this view, and the comet was named Straw Hat due to its creation in the war. It was a reminder that Monkey D. Luffy was not a legend made up, but someone who had already left his mark on the world, someone who had been absent for more than a year, but surely somewhere, waiting for the ideal moment to appear in the world. Once a month, everyone, without exception, remembered him, that one day he would be back. Questions continued to be asked around the world, still. Where is he and what is he doing? Why hasn't he returned to the world? Even those who hated and feared him, as well as those who admired and loved him, pondered this type of question in their minds, some hopeful for the future while others had thoughts not as optimistic as Rotiv. Meanwhile, the man in question, out of sight of the entire world, was in his current headquarters, amidst the clouds. He was fiddling with some sort of engine inside a hood, while tightening some gears with a screw. I think it's good, Luffy murmured, finishing tightening the last screws on the engine and carburetor, smiling as he looked at the V8 engine he himself had built in his spare time. It's ready to run now. Let's do a test, he said satisfied. In front of him, there was a car that he himself had built. Quickly closing the hood, he was ready to get in and see if his machine really worked. Looking at the car, in the glass with 2 leather seats, a baby's sound came from inside the car. Let's see if you can handle a little excitement, son, Luffy said, approaching to prepare the test of his newly built machine with his little son next to the passenger seat. Chapter 366, Heirs. Luffy entered the car, while looking at the little boy with blue hair and red eyes sitting next to him. The boy looked back curiously, making small drinking gestures as Luffy smiled. You see, Sinbad, engines already exist in this world, but no one has ever made a car like your dad's. This is a Mustang GT with a V8 engine, which I developed myself, Luffy told his son, who nodded curiously at his father's words. Luffy just smiled and put the key in the ignition before turning it. The car immediately made a loud noise as its engine started. Who? The little boy was startled at first. Calm down, son. The fun is just beginning, Luffy said, wanting his son to experience some adrenaline. While the engine continued to burn the fuel he had put in, he went to the radio and put on a playlist that he had asked Brook and Utah to record for him. Then the music started to play. AC or DC's Thunderstruck. As he began to press the pedal in neutral, while the car roared louder and louder, with his son looking more excited now. He wasted no time as he quickly shifted from neutral to first gear, starting to release the clutch and accelerate as the car sped off, tires skidding, going as fast as the engine allowed. The car quickly started speeding through the forest on a road built for this in the upper garden, making turns here and there. Are you enjoying it, son? Luffy asked as he turned the steering wheel to make a turn, pulling the handbrake with the tire squealing as he drifted. AHH. The boy made fearless baby sounds as he watched everything through the window. Let's add a bit more excitement, Luffy said. He had experienced much to simply enjoy driving a car at high speed, but it was nostalgic for him as he continued making turns and wanted Sinbad to share this moment with him. At a distance, suddenly a giant gorilla appeared from over a hill as it looked at the car moving through the forest, quickly starting to pick up rocks and moving its arm to throw them. Luffy watched calmly, as he had asked that animal to do exactly this. After all, he wanted to test his steering skills while his car began to dodge the first rock hitting beside the car. The rocks didn't stop. Luffy turned the steering wheel from one side to the other, dodging rocks that could easily crush the car. His voice still continued excited with his voice muffled by the rock and roll music. He continued like this for a while as the car kept making tire-burning noises on the streets, until he finally arrived below the gorilla, braking right beneath it. However, the gorilla did not stop after all. Luffy had promised a lot of food if it could hit him and threw the rock below him, closer to Luffy than ever. However, the rock exploded as a shot advanced and hit the gorilla's face, making it explode as it appeared burned with the gorilla having white eyes as it fell unconscious and defeated. In the midst of the smoke, Luffy appeared pointing his pistol upward while looking with an unpleasant gaze. "I told this idiot not to keep throwing when the car looks like," he commented. "Ah." The boy seemed the happiest while continuing to clap his small hands. Sinbad was only a few months old, he should be with his mother, but Luffy wanted to have time with his son too. "At least you had fun. Let's go now, we need to see your mother, she'll be looking for us soon," John said as he left the car aside and picked up his son, unfastening his seatbelt before leaving the area with the car and the unconscious gorilla, while moving with Moonwalk to the middle of the island. He didn't take long to see the woman with long blue hair, her hands on her hips as she looked at Luffy like a hawk. "Luffy, you weren't doing something dangerous with Sinbad, were you?" Vivi asked, looking at him in the same way. "You talk as if I do this with him all the time." Luffy smiled, approaching his wife with his son in his arms. "It's because you always do," Vivi complained. "He's going to be a great warrior, so it's good for him to get used to adrenaline." Luffy spoke. "But he's only 3 months old, Luffy, what kind of father are you?" She didn't stop complaining. "Ha ha ha. You say that because you don't know about my childhood. My grandfather used to throw me and Lucy into the forest at that age," he said as if it were something normal. "Ah, why do I even argue with you?" Vivi murmured, dissatisfied, but Luffy grabbed her by the waist and pulled her close. "You're a great mother, Vivi. But I will always take care of our son. Now where are the others? Let's put him with them." Luffy spoke, and despite her pout, Vivi nodded with a blush before kissing Luffy. Their son just watched and started making noises too, as Vivi picked him up. "They're on the ship with your sister," she said, and Luffy sensed it with his haki. They entered the Black Pearl, which was in front of his golden palace. The ship hadn't left there in the last year. Luffy hadn't only been training and developing his projects and army in his realms around the world, but he also ended up having children. Vivi realized she was pregnant as soon as she returned from Alabasta. Her father had noticed it before she did. After all, the man wanted a grandchild as quickly as possible and sniffed it out from his daughter. Luffy couldn't be surprised. After all, they had had hours and hours of sex since they arrived in Skypiea, but it wasn't just Hancock and Vivi who had children. He entered the room where he found his sister playing with his nephew, a boy just like Luffy, with dark hair and red eyes, 2 months old, and another girl with white hair and red eyes, being nursed by Yamato, her mother. "You've finally arrived." "Foo-fa-foo." Robin greeted him, being the mother of the boy identical to Luffy. Luffy had children with Hancock, Vivi, Robin, and Yamato, having 2 boys and 3 girls. "Luffy, look at this!" Lucy exclaimed while playing with Lumum, Robin's son, as her sister stretched her body with the child exclaiming happily. He approached with Vivi and Sinbad. "How's our Lumum?" He approached his son stretching in his aunt's arms, while the little boy looked at his father asking to be held immediately. Luffy ended up picking him up and moved next to Robin and Yamato. "How's Naimaya?" Luffy asked, his daughter not even bothering to look up while being breastfed. "Very well. She's eating a lot, as always," Yamato commented. "That's good," Luffy remarked and looked around for some people on the ship. "Where are Makita and Yuta?" Luffy asked. "They went out for some air," Robin commented, picking up the boy who still didn't want to leave his father. Luffy quickly scanned the island and saw the 2 dipping their feet in an empty waterfall. "I'm going to pick up Hancock from Amazon Lily. I want to spend tonight with all my children," Luffy said as the others nodded, and he started to leave the place. However, as soon as he opened the door to leave, a woman appeared blocking his path, while holding a hand extended on the wall in a pose trying to seduce him. "So, future husband, don't you think it's time for you and me to have a child too?" The woman with pink hair spoke with a confident smile, as Luffy sighed. This was none other than Lola. However, this Lola was very different from what she was a year ago. After she ate the Munch Munch fruit model, munch human and began to eat things to generate metal. She started to lose weight. Her formerly round body began to gain curves in the right place as the fruit eliminated all her fat, leaving her as beautiful as her mother in her youth. Luffy had to admit that it was an incredible transformation and that he would certainly be tempted by this woman, especially since she flirted with him all the time, and she did it only with him. We haven't even slept together and you're talking about children? Luffy raised an eyebrow. Then we can easily resolve that, she exclaimed, advancing towards him with puckered lips, but Luffy dodged. Another time perhaps, now I must see my daughters. Luffy spoke and quickly passed by the woman, who lost her balance and fell to the ground, her enormous breasts cushioning her fall as the other women looked at Lola, sighing at a scene that was quite common. Luffy proceeded to Amazon Lily and went straight to the palace. It didn't take long for the door to open with Hancock appearing, holding two daughters. Luffy! She exclaimed as she approached. Daddy! Papa! The two daughters, nearly a year old, were already speaking some words and had immediately learned to say daddy. Both had characteristics of their father and mother, with their dark hair, one of them having Luffy's eyes and the other having Hancock's eyes. Luffy approached with a smile while Gloriosa and Hancock's sisters craned their necks from the door. Luna and Aurora. He approached the two with a loving touch. Shishi. They laughed at Luffy's touch, as he caressed them. Come on, let's go inside. I want to spend some time with you, Luffy said, and they entered the palace. It's been over a year and a few months. Boy. You have a much greater responsibility now. Will you start to act soon? Gloriosa asked as Luffy looked at her. Yes. I'll be starting to organize our departure in the next few days, but for now, I'm just going to pay attention to my children and my pregnant wives. Luffy spoke. After all, Uten and Makita were also expecting his children. Luffy had gone from 2 children to more than 7 kids, not that he could complain, since most of his wives hadn't yet been pregnant. In the end, Luffy stayed in the palace spoiling Hancock and the girls. Papa. Will we go out soon? Luna asked curiously while Luffy touched her head as she lay on top of him in bed. Yes. Soon we'll be at sea again and when our adventure is over, I'll take you to visit the whole world, Luffy said with a small smile. Will we go too? Aurora looked at him surprised as he smiled at her. Yes. Now let's get out of here, we have to see your siblings. I want you all to have a party together today. Yes. Want to see the siblings? They exclaimed at the same time. Hancock liked to keep them with her all the time here on Amazon Lily. Luffy always asked her to keep them together, and she did often, but not as much as Luffy would like. In the end, they left the palace and returned to the Black Pearl, each carrying a daughter, and Luffy gathered all the children. His 4 children played while the youngest still needed Yamato's lap, but Luffy also kept his daughter with him, and even the siblings played a bit with her there. Makita and Yuta also joined, and Luffy was surrounded by mothers of his children with 5 kids and 2 more on the way soon. This was his real family, one he had solidified in the last year by spreading his seed for the first time in this world, but he still couldn't fully enjoy his family. After all, he had an entire world to conquer and soon, he would be executing his plan to start conquering the entire new world and finding the One Piece. Chapter 367, Joy Girl. Luffy woke up the following day feeling some pleasure as he opened his eyes, slightly surprised. You finally woke up. A female voice was heard as Luffy saw Shirahoshi looking at him with a small smile while wiping her lips after giving him a brief blowjob. Shira. Luffy murmured as he looked at the naked mermaid, but not at her 17 meters. Luffy had regained some of his fruit powers over the last few months and could shrink things again while the mermaid returned to her 1.7 meters, being able to sleep again with Luffy in the same bed. Did you like how you woke up? She asked with a mischievous smile. I can't complain. Luffy looked at his mermaid wife and couldn't help but see how she had changed over the last year. She had matured so much that her voice was now that of a woman and not a frightened little girl. The same could be said of her personality. She was braver and more confident. Her gaze had changed a lot too, like a true ruler, and Luffy was satisfied with it. Why don't you reciprocate and fuck me while there's no one in the room? She asked with a seductive smile as she moved her tail to the side, and pulled it up where her butt was, revealing a type of pussy that mermaids had. Luffy wouldn't deny his wife's request as his dick was already hardened from the blowjob he had received shortly before as he approached and positioned it near the already lubricated hole as he fit it in. It was like fucking any other woman, while the scales on the tail didn't hurt him as he began to move. Shirahoshi looked at Luffy with a face lost in pleasure as he started to pound against her ass going in and out of her. Luffy, I want a child of yours, she murmured while moaning at the same time. It was no secret that she also wanted to be a mother. Luffy saw it on the faces of all the women, as they felt envy while watching the children running back and forth around the place, or even when he saw their hands nursing the children. Luffy got carried away as was usual in morning sex and began to pound Shirahoshi hard while squeezing her large breasts, and continued this for the next hour until he finally found himself back in bed, with the mermaid glued to his side maintaining a closed smile as she slept clinging to him. Luffy smiled at Shirahoshi before giving her a kiss on the forehead and leaving the bed, taking a shower to prepare to start the day. After all, he had to prepare everything to start his new journey. He left the room after putting on some clothes with Shirahoshi still sleeping in bed. His wives had left him alone early in the morning and Shiro was the only one who stayed to enjoy her husband. He walked down the hallway while encountering a baby stopped in the hallway who immediately stared at him. "Sinbad? Shouldn't you be with your mother?" Luffy approached as he picked up the boy who did nothing more than look at him curiously. He made a sound trying to say something, but Luffy just laughed at it. "Come on. Let's see your mother and the others," he said as he continued through the ship, finding his daughter running with some difficulty toward him, with her learning to walk. "Papa!" Aurora shouted, seeing Sinbad in Luffy's arms, clinging to his legs. "You found him." Sinbad had disappeared. She complained with her childlike voice and Luffy quickly picked her up. "Did he hide from you?" He couldn't help but smile at Sinbad. "Yes. Papa, he disappeared," she exclaimed with her little arms raised. Luffy just played a bit more as he moved to another room. There were some of his women playing with the children while eating. "Did you find your dad, Sinbad?" Vivi approached as Luffy handed over the boy, giving a kiss to the wife, then went to the table sitting next to Hancock with his other daughter, handing Aurora to her. "Good morning." Luffy greeted everyone present. "Here, your breakfast." Reiju handed him a tray with meat and scrambled eggs. "Nami, are you doing what I asked?" Luffy inquired as the girl nodded. "Yes, I'm setting all the routes, but do you plan to start a war that way in the New World?" Nami asked with a raised eyebrow. "Of course. Just set the route for the chaos we will create and leave the rest to me and the others." Luffy smiled. "Daddy. Take this, it's really good." Luna exclaimed from beside Hancock, trying to give a fruit to Luffy, who took it before ruffling his daughter's hair. "Where are the others?" "They're training. Kuina and Zoro are training on the White Sea a few kilometers from here to keep it quiet. Usopp, Brooke, Frankie, Bonnie, Kairos, Rebecca, Perona, Lola, Jinbai, Vippo, Chaochu, and Chopper are fighting on the island of experiments. Lucy is with Rayleigh and I don't know about the others." "But Hugo." Nojiko was about to speak. "He's with my sisters," Hancock said with a smile. "So they really are together?" Luffy murmured. "You like a gossip, don't you?" Alvida raised an eyebrow at Luffy. "Of course. I wondered when they would have something since I noticed their looks more than 6 months ago," Luffy commented. Hugo and Hancock's sisters had been flirting a lot lately, so he was happy with what happened, especially since Hugo had a sad story with his wife and daughter killed by a world noble while he became a slave before being rescued by Luffy. It wasn't just that, many women from Amazon Lily ended up relating with men from Skypiea. The birth rate exploded this year, but Luffy asked that they ensure that they learned the 6 styles, which happened with some of them. Luffy had 2,000 Amazons with 6 styles, 5,000 Skypieans. His entire fleet increased to 10,000 and they all knew the 6 styles as well. Some members from each country were selected to be here and train, creating a unique military force in each country to ensure that they could protect them. "I see. How are things with all the thousands of soldiers?" "They can already go to the kingdoms." Luffy spoke with his wife who had let her hair grow in the last year. Nami and Nojiko both had long hair. Nojiko's was a bit darker than Vivi's, so there was no confusing them. "Yes. As you said, they are preparing to leave soon, but they want you to do it formally." Nojiko spoke as Luffy raised an eyebrow. "I understand. All right. I'll do that," Luffy said as he went back to eating. He talked with his wives and Shirahoshi joined them a moment later and talked about a few more things before leaving the ship. He looked over all the activity on the island with his observation hockey and his attention turned to an island exploding in Conqueror's hockey coming from it and crossing the entire sky of Skypiea. Luffy then went there. At this moment it didn't take long for him to reach the spot where there were 2 people at this moment competing between Conqueror's hockey in the middle of the island making it tremble, while Lucy and Rayleigh disputed the coding of King's hockey. Lucy had learned it and became extremely powerful, but still could not defeat Rayleigh as she gradually retreated until finally losing, being thrown back digging the ground, but coming back with outstretched hands. "Damn. Uncle Rayleigh. I can't win," she complained as her observation hockey warned of Luffy's arrival. "You're here." Like Lucy, Rayleigh also looked at Luffy with a smile. "Yes. Your explosions are showy. Just like those of Zoro and Kuina." Luffy murmured while in the distance, there were explosions happening, with both swordsmen fighting in the middle of the sky. "She's prepared to enter the new world, but are you ready for the challenges of those waters? After all, no one in the world has as great a challenge as the sky." Rayleigh spoke. In Skypiea, no newspaper arrived, but always a member of the Baroque Works, the organization Luffy took over to collect information and protect the kingdoms, brought the updated newspapers. Some time ago came the newspaper from a statement that shocked the world, while 2-4 Emperor Sus, Big Mom and Kaido, declared that they were aligned to defeat the Straw Hats. Luffy just smiled. 1-4 Emperor Su, 2-4 Emperor Sus, I will defeat all four, so let them come as many as they want at the same time. Luffy said confidently. You're saying that? Rayleigh murmured as a burst of haki surged from him towards Luffy. Luffy felt Rayleigh's haki to test it, while he himself was unbothered by it, as Luffy just smiled. An explosion countered with his own immodest haki, creating a wall between the two. Lucy had to look on with surprised eyes as both hakis battled each other, while Luffy and Rayleigh maintained their gaze like two sovereigns opposing each other. Rayleigh began to increase the pressure, and Luffy matched him after 10 seconds of dispute. So you want to raise the level? Luffy asked as his yellow flashes began to turn red with the day starting to fade. Papa is doing it again? Aurora exclaimed from the ship as darkness began to take over the sky. Is Daddy fighting? Luna asked her mother while Hancock silently looked up. The entire island noticed the strange darkness with red flashes appearing, and even animals with arms coated in haki fighting. Some members looked scared at that. Luffy. Is he going to do that? Usopp commented cautiously as the others also looked on. But as Luffy was about to unleash that level of haki, Rayleigh began to retreat, his yellow flashes clashing against the red flashes emerging from Luffy, and his pressure started to decrease. We better not do this again. You know very well what happened last time you unleashed that haki. You still don't have full control of it. Rayleigh spoke with a tired tone. All right. Luffy murmured as he sighed and looked towards his sister still watching them, seated and clapping. That was amazing. She declared with a smile. Well, you seem excited. That's good, since I came here to test the transformation of your zone again. Luffy declared as Rayleigh looked on with interest, unsurprised unlike Garp, who knew the real identity of the rubber fruit. After all, Gamu Gamu never existed. Do you want me to turn white again? Lucy asked. Yes, I want you to awaken your fruit. You're ready for it, you just need to learn how to do it. Luffy requested. All right. Lucy murmured quickly as she prepared to transform into Joy Girl, closing her eyes as Luffy had asked. She focused. Now let your heart beat. Listen to the drums of liberation. Luffy instructed as she concentrated with her vision all covered. Then she began to see something, her fruit in her consciousness while it started to beat like a drum. I'm feeling it. Is this the drum brother talks about so much? Lucy murmured internally surprised as she saw her fruit appearing to her. She. Luffy murmured surprised as he felt something changing in Lucy. The same could be said for Rayleigh with eyes keen to see the transformation of the legendary Joy Boy. Then smoke began to come out of her mouth, as she began to see the drums beating more and more, starting to get into a frantic rhythm. As she felt she was about to beat forcefully with her heart growing more agitated, while Luffy and Rayleigh looked aghast at the white smoke coming out of Lucy's mouth, she suddenly exhaled a lot of gas, her face deflating as she fell to the ground the next moment. I'm so hungry! She exclaimed. Luffy and Rayleigh then fell to the ground stunned, their expectations shattered. Chapter 368, Lovers. Explosions continued happening on one of the training islands, while Luffy coated his fist with armament haki against another huge claw also using haki, coming towards him. As they clashed, Luffy quickly gained the advantage, hearing a cry of pain as the animal in question flew backward with force. Luffy landed on the ground, looking at the destruction he created as the animal crashed through everything, flying backward. Too weak. Luffy said while a group of lions, snakes, zebras, rhinoceroses, monkeys, gorillas, wolves, and many other animals looked at him with defeated eyes around him. You've learned to use haki. But you're too weak with Ryo haki. Luffy murmured while the animals lowered their heads in shame. Luffy saw this and continued. But keep training, I hope to see you all extremely powerful when the time comes. He said, as the animals just looked at him, nodding, gaining a bit of confidence. These animals, besides their scientists managing to teach them haki, which was something deemed impossible, had even gained some intelligence and were no longer beasts thinking only of killing each other. They even began to form some kind of society. Grandpa would be very happy if he saw this place. He's an enthusiast when it comes to forests or islands for training. Here, he would be living a big dream. Luffy thought as he imagined his grandfather with stars in his eyes, starting to fight all the animals. Luffy. Rebecca approached him while watching the fight with other crew members. Yes. Luffy looked at her. I wanted to know if we're going to Dressrosa soon. Rebecca murmured while Luffy nodded. You're eager to return to Dressrosa, aren't you? Luffy smiled at her, while she nodded shyly. Do you think you're ready to free your country? He asked. Yes. Rebecca exclaimed with a more confident smile. That's good. We'll leave soon. Luffy said as he looked at his other members. I want you all to fight with the animals. I'll check the other island. Luffy said, while the members who were honing their haki returned to training. Luffy then headed to where the dinosaurs he had taken from Little Garden over a year ago were.